Welcome to the Triple Takeover Toycast, a fortnightly podcast all about Transformers and occasionally other toy lines as well, but tonight very much is about Transformers because we've got one of the people that makes Transformers with us for the chat, which is very exciting. We'll get to him in a moment. My name is Sixo, but more on that later because I'm joined, as ever, by my lovely co-hosts. We've got Liam from Toybox Soapbox and Jason from J-Swags. How you doing, fellas?
Hello there.
What-ho?
Right.
That was a quick one. Nice one.
Yeah, it was.
Efficient. Yeah.
What-ho in there? Yeah.
Indeed.
I was going to say, no what-hos tonight, Liam. I'm going to go for that.
I said what-ho.
I know,
What-ho
I heard
chaps.
you, yeah,
There we go.
I almost thought it wasn't going to happen. So you've been
Don't let everyone down.
lambasting me for your lack of what-hos the last couple of episodes. So.
This is starting to get weird, isn't it? What
Yeah.
hose? Just sounds wrong. Yeah. Why don't we introduce the other person in the room?
We should do, shouldn't we? Yeah, we're talking about what hose, and we've got to talk about Mr. Evan Brooks, who's with us tonight. Welcome, Evan.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We're absolutely delighted to have you on the episode tonight. So thank you very much for making time for it. I really appreciate it.
No, it's okay. I'm glad we were able to get this going. It was a lot of back and forth. So
it was, wasn't it? Yeah, but worth it in the end. So, and I guess it's what, late afternoon for you there?
Yeah. We'll just say that. But it's late evening for you guys.
Is it worth it? Yeah, we need to kind of paint the picture for everyone listening as well that Evan's standing in a room that is just backed by a lot of very nice transforming robots as well. Yeah. What kind of collection have we got going on there, Evan, behind you?
We have a lot. You're kind of looking at, I guess, the Masterpiece collection with Zoids in the background. And then a couple other of the TakaraTomy kind of like Yusha O figures.
Lovely.
Whenever I take a call with Takara late at night, they always kind of like to point and be like, "Oh, look, it's X Kaiser," and it's like, "Yes, this is my favorite toy that you've ever made." So,
oh, nice!
That's brilliant.
That's so cool. I have the original X Kaiser literally just up in this cabinet, just here.
Oh yeah.
So and Dragon Kaiser and everything as well. So just there,
that's
I've got
awesome.
Some Brave, going off a little mini Brave collection, but
I mean, Brave is Transformers 2.0 in a lot of respects.
Exactly.
So I love it to death.
I do too. I would love to own more of it. They're so big, though. That's the thing. Like they just take up a lot of room.
Yes, and we'll say wall space is at a premium these days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We all know that pain. Yeah. even I'm moving soon, and even moving is, I don't think, going to solve that issue. I think there's only one solution, which
that's
is
why you're moving, isn't it? Just to get
more
toy space.
Why I'm moving. Yeah, I know.
Because you need another room, another wall, another shelf.
I need another room, another wall. Exactly.
A wing.
A separate wing. Oh no.
It's funny because you're in the position that I was in about 2 years ago when I moved, and I know you were kind of like celebrating the fact, Jason, that you've got 2 extra cabinets to come in this new room of yours in your new house. But I remember it so well when I moved. I was like, and January was the same. I was like, I'm going to be able to get 2 extra cabinets. It's going to be amazing. And then somehow I moved in, and they were just full already. It was like
that is going to be
completely ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's like I don't know.
It's always how it goes.
Toy collections are like made of water. It just sort of expands to fill the space.
Well, because that's when you like spread it out, like, oh, I can finally put everything like fully on display, and then it's like, no, everybody's got to go back to front again, like fully stacked and sandwiched to fit it all on there.
This is it. All combiners combined. That's a must.
Yes,
You've got to have that.
That's the ultimate space-saving device, that.
It is,
really
isn't
is.
it? I know, exactly. Yeah,
it really is.
That's just my buying habits now. Oh, that's not my buying habits. G2 is where I'm going at the moment, but we'll come to that another time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't have any G2. This is partly because of the pod as well. And so I've suddenly started getting G2 Dinobots. So I've got G2 Grimlock literally to my left, just here as well. Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And that blue deco looks amazing.
And then I have to ask, like, what color of, like, I have to say slug. But what color slug are you going for?
Well, so I limited choices until recently, but I have a green slug coming.
Oh, okay.
Good start. Great start.
I know, so green slug on the way. It seems appropriate for slug, doesn't it, to be green?
Yeah.
That's the only time it does work with that as well. But yeah,
it fits.
You got to get a red one though as well, man. You can't.
I've got to get them all now. This is your fault. You know? I appreciate this being your fault as well.
I may have sent you a few links.
What's fascinating? Hasbro has like an old archive where a lot of like they essentially kept like 1 or 2 of every figure they've ever released, and we go there every once in a while to kind of like sift through it to get reference material, things like that. And we actually found a lot of like the G2 Dinobots there, but they were all G1 colored.
Oh,
but
really?
they still, but they had the G2 packaging, and we were like, oh, this is fascinating.
Wow.
So it's very possible that was like maybe early packaging samples or something like that before the colors were finalized.
They did do a release of the G2 Dinobots in the silver, in the kind of grey color. Yeah.
Okay.
I have them, but they still have the G2 tampos. They all had Autobot and Decepticon tampoed on them.
Yeah.
So that was an official release. They did come out, but they're just not as common as the other two, kind of colored versions, as it were. So
so this goes right up there with like the yellow Devastator and the orange-red Devastator, where it was like some places had this, some places had this. So.
I believe the orange one, the Devastator, I think was a KB exclusive in America. I have heard that suggested.
That sounds right. It's interesting because it's like I got my yellow Devastator at KB Toys when I was a kid, but I so vividly do remember seeing on the shelves the yellows and the reds, and I was like, why? Like, that's weird. The oranges.
See, to us, of course, KB and places like this are just names. Like we've got we know so much about these places weirdly, but like we've never been there or anything. So it's just kind of like a bit like Walmart, really. Like I have actually been to a Walmart, but we talk about it all the time, but we don't have that in this country. So
but you had Toys R Us though, right? Like
we did.
Yeah. Okay.
And, we had in Scotland we had Jolly Giant as well.
We had that here.
True story.
That's just you, Jason.
That's a great name.
Green Giant. Yeah.
Jolly Giant. I remember going over there in the kind of 90s when Transformers were trying to come back and we got the kind of reissues, trying to find anywhere that might have some G1 reissues. And my option was Toys R Us in Edinburgh or Jolly Giant on the outskirts of Glasgow, and that was it. Slim pickings.
Were those the gold boxes back then?
This was this would have been this would have been early. It would have been gold box releases at that point as well. You never saw those in Scotland. We weren't that lucky. They never
I'm sorry.
made it.
I've only been very much recently made aware of just how little kind of trickled out there to that side of the world.
We got a fair amount. We did pretty well. There was a lot we didn't get. So we didn't get toys like Swoop, for example, is the big one that
which was shocking.
Remember. Yeah. Especially as he was such a big character in our comic, in the UK comic, he was really prominent. And Shockwave
died, came back again, died again. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But he just wasn't ever released here. So there's a lot of toys that we saw a lot about, like Fort Max and things as well, Fortress Maximus.
Tripticon.
And was Whirl and Broadside, they weren't released over here, were they?
Yeah, I had Broadside as a kid, so Broadside definitely.
Really?
Broadside definitely,
You see, again, this is the Scotland-England divide now. This
fascinating.
Is
but then you guys got Euro G1 exclusives.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. That's true.
I mean, you got Overlord. You got so many... You technically got Road Caesar in a weird way, I guess.
Yeah, and I had two of those three toys, the Motivators, when I was a kid. So they were, but that was so weird. It was such a weird era as a kid because it was like we were getting this stuff, and it was kind of like, what is this? Do you know what I mean? It just felt so different to anything else.
No entertainment attached to them because they didn't show up in any of our comics or the show, obviously, because we never got the anime. Yeah, I remember
it was so weird.
As an adult, stumbling into a collector toy show that had some of that stuff, and it's in English, but I've never seen this before. And I thought I knew Transformers, and I was a teenager at the time, and it blew my mind. So,
well, we were very much the same when we kind of discovered a lot of the kind of I suppose US exclusive stuff, but also all the Japanese stuff and everything. It was just like wow,
it was a whole new world,
a whole world here that we didn't know about.
It totally is. That's part of the fun though now for me as well. I think that's why the G2 stuff, because I kind of feel like my G1 collection is very solid. I love it, and I got Bumble Jumper recently.
Oh wow!
Last year's TFN. So there's not many gaps in that side for the US releases and Europe releases. But then G2 suddenly was like, there's an entire line over here that I've not really considered before as well. And then all those Dinobot variants are just very lovely, quite enjoyable. Just getting that little go in and explore, find it. So it's nice to find that stuff and explore it and get that buzz again.
We absolutely must do a proper episode on G2 at some point, because even once you get past all the recolors and stuff as well, I genuinely maintain that there's so many very creative and original toys in that 90s era that just no one really ever talks about.
The laser cycles, all of that stuff.
Yeah. And then the introduction of ball joints, in a lot of the G2 stuff, kind of revolutionized transformation.
Crossover into Beast Wars with that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I know talking to Ajima-san over at TakaraTomy, he got his start, I believe in the late 90s, or the early 90s, like right at the start of G2 before Beast Wars.
Cool.
And I think because he was saying like Action Masters were kind of ending when he joined Takara, and like that's like, so a lot of that stuff is stuff that he worked on, and it's fascinating to talk to him about stuff like that.
That always fascinates me generally about TakaraTomy, is that they've got people that have worked there for so long that, you know, I mean, you've got guys now that are working on new versions of characters that they worked on originally, you know, they worked on, like, even in some cases, like the original, you know, Microchange or Diaclone toys, you know, that now they're doing new versions of and things like this. And I just think that is incredible, you know, in terms of longevity and whatever else.
It is amazing. And I know, like, there is like a cultural difference of like, you join a company over in Japan, you're kind of there for life. But at the same time, what's fascinating is normally in corporate culture, like even like in Hasbro, every couple of years they'll like move you around, right? Because they want new blood, they want new ideas, they don't want you to be jaded. But the Transformer team over there stays very consistent just because it's a very unique skill set. So when you talk to a lot of the Takara guys over there, they're like, yeah, I've kind of only ever worked on Transformers or Transformer adjacent items like Yusha O, Web Diver, things like that. Things that have always had that kind of unique function. So it's fascinating. It's really cool.
There's a lot to be said for that, I think. Yeah, it's really quite admirable in a way. So, but yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think the Western culture is much more like, mix it up, you know, don't get bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
just even from my work history, I can tell you that.
But it's like that whole kind of 10,000 hours. You know, you do 10,000 hours and you become an expert in something. So that thing about just staying with something and that you're doing that and then revisiting it, and then, but there is definitely an advantage as well to kind of going somewhere else and getting inspiration and finding new ideas and coming back to it and revisiting. So I guess in a way that kind of makes that whole Hasbro to TakaraTomy relationship a really good one as well, because you're getting two different routes to come up with the creative ideas as well.
It's a unique partnership for sure. I don't know, however, how many other companies kind of work the way we do, but I enjoy it, obviously.
Well, you know, I mean, to be honest, we've got questions and stuff prepared to ask you, but one of them was about to kind of jump straight into it, was about your relationship with TakaraTomy, because obviously I know you guys work very much hand in hand with them and things like that. You know, what is a sort of a normal working relationship with them like? Like, how much crossover is there on like a particular project? Is it like a daily communication thing, or is it kind of once a week? Or
it's daily.
Right.
I mean, it's essentially you send an email and then you get a response the next morning. You send another email. It's essentially back and forth like that, usually on a project. And then depending on the complexity of the project, things of that nature, maybe there's a bit of a gap between those communications, but then you usually have a couple other figures that you're working on as well with other people. So that's normally how it goes.
Because it's very much kind of done with partnership, isn't it? Like you partner up with a particular person over there and things like that.
Yes and no. It's kind of a... like over there, it's like a specific figure is worked on by a specific designer. And it's entirely possible that like an entire wave of figures, like each figure will be handled by a different designer.
Right, wow.
Whereas opposed to like over on the Hasbro side, like Studio Series, like pretty much me, and then Generations is Mark. So that's kind of the difference in how we handle things, I suppose. But normally before we kick anything off, we sit down and we discuss with them. This is what we're thinking. Like, how do you feel about this? Like, we have video calls with them. We go over to Japan. They come over here. We always kind of make sure to be like, hey, this is what we're planning for the next year. This is what we're thinking for the slots in Deluxe and Voyager. What do you think about this? They'll have opinions as well. They'll have their suggestions. And we always try to make sure that we are walking hand in hand, I guess is the best way to put it.
That makes sense.
Is that so that you're not kind of clashing as well, so that when you're releasing something and that you're aware that like, okay, Hasbro are going to be doing this and then we're going to be doing this line, and you know, kind of from different territories and stuff like that and different release schedules, you know?
Yes, we definitely try to make sure that we're, I guess, informed about what everybody's trying to do. Like our franchise team will talk to their team. Like they have a separate domestic team, which that separate domestic team over there is who's doing like the dramatic capture stuff, the masterpiece stuff. We try to keep each other informed about what's coming when, so that we can make sure that we're aligned.
On that, so we were lucky enough to go and see Transformers 1 in a preview, which was very exciting. And so Transformers 1 now. That's, if I'm correct, that's a Hasbro property that's doing the toys on that and stuff. I saw both B127 and the Orion packs in the shops today, which was very exciting. What about when something like that turns up on your desk? So it's obviously a movie tie-in. Is that also something you're talking to TakaraTomy about as well, and making them aware? And then, so how would that collab work? Because you've also got a movie studio and everything as well.
Well, yeah, and that's an added layer of complexity to it. But essentially, like any development that has to be done for a Transformer figure that converts has to go through TakaraTomy, or at least they have right of first refusal. So more often than not, they would very much like to work on it and develop it. So even when it's a movie thing, like, you know, the Michael Bay movies or the new Transformers 1 movies, it is still us working with TakaraTomy to bring out the figures. Even if it's kid line, even if it's studio series, it doesn't matter.
Right, brilliant.
Yeah, because I think it's funny, isn't it? Because you do see some people sometimes sort of almost have this impression of you working as sort of two separate companies, you know, and then just kind of talking to each other occasionally. But it is very much hand in hand, isn't it? That you sort of...
Usually, yes.
Yeah. And
there will always be aspects of like I'm on the design side of things, so I'm usually only talking to the designers. But I know like my management is probably talking to their management, and they're probably getting different information sometimes than what trickles down to me. Who knows? We're all human beings, right? So,
But I'm right in saying though, Evan, aren't I? That I know obviously you do the design side, but you very much are involved with like pitching for different characters being made and things like this as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like,
yeah,
you get quite involved with that kind of stuff, because I know that you like some of your kind of weird and wonderful projects and things like this, and some
the good
slightly obscure characters and that kind of stuff. Is that fair to say? Like,
it is absolutely fair to say.
Cool.
But at the same time, it's like, in order to get those off the ground, I got to get everybody to hold hands and agree. Like, I can't just... There are a few times, like when I got Javelin out there and Cascade, like, I was so like, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I tricked everyone into believing I could do this. But there are... Yeah, everybody usually has to agree, has to hold hands and be like, yeah, we're doing this figure. But yes, normally... Character selection wise, that is something that I pitch. That is also something that TakaraTomy pitches when we're pitching for like the start of a new year.
I was going to ask.
When you go and pitch these characters to people who maybe are less aware of them, do you have to like say what they are as part of convincing them? Like say, they're this important, everyone's going to love this, man. Trust me, just get on board. Let's make this guy.
Yes, and obviously there are like Grimlock is very easy, like because sometimes you're working with someone new who doesn't know who it is, but they'll see it's like, oh, it's a dinosaur. Yeah, let's freaking go. But yes, normally you have to give them like the elevator speech of just like, hey, here's why this character is freaking awesome and it's going to do great. It has this really cool alt mode. We always have to do something like that. Normally we have to try and find a balance of just like these, like when you're laying out a year and a wave, you have to be like, okay, this wave contains a couple very well-known characters and this little niche character that only I care about. But
is it kind of like how Christopher Nolan almost describes making his films, where he's like, he does a studio film, like one for them, and then he gets to do one for him? Is it kind of like, would you say it's a bit like that?
That's almost very apt. Yeah, I'd say that's, Yeah, I'd say that's a good way to put it.
Is the trick then finding a way to tie them all together? Like when you put them out in, say, Legacy United or stuff like that, there's a way. There's very different characters from different corners of the universe, and it's like, these are characters I want and people want to see, and it's like, how do we then make them make sense together on a shelf and stuff like that?
I would say previous years, yes. This year in particular, which was meant to be like a 40th anniversary celebration of any and all animation properties, we kind of went a little bit more wild than we had before, a little bit wider. But in the past, normally there would be some theme of just like, these are all Beast characters or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that, but then Kingdom would randomly have like Inferno. Fire Truck Inferno.
That was always catching me out. I'm like, what's going on? Hang on. I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah, Inferno, but not the Inferno that you might imagine. Yeah,
exactly. But it's a G1 character, and G1 still sells very well. So
absolutely. Yeah. It's funny though, and it's funny seeing you guys move sort of almost away from G1 a little bit at this point. I'm assuming that, you know, I know it still pops up and there are still G1 nods, but it does feel now, particularly with the kind of mainline generations element, that it really kind of has shifted away from that a little bit. But you've still obviously got G1 in Studio Series and whatever else. So, but it's an interesting place now for everything that's coming out, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's just because our fan base, like every series, because Transformers kind of reboots itself every 3 years. We have many different age groups that grew up with different eras of Transformers, and it's like trying to, like, I just came from Comic-Con back in July, and I actually talked to a lot of people like in their early 20s, some were late teenagers, and they were like, I love Transformers. This was my entry point. And it's really kind of eye-opening because even though I am in my late 30s, because I was born in the middle of the 80s, G1 is still my first Transformers because it was on syndication, right? It was always on television. So that's what I grew up with. But other people, they grew up with Beast Wars, they grew up with Armada, things like that. And we're always just trying to make sure that we kind of appeal to them. And also, there are just some great freaking designs and characters that came out in other series besides G1. And we just want to make sure that we cover all those bases.
Yeah, definitely doing that.
It must be fun from your point of view as well, from a design point of view, that you get to visit characters that are best love and respect. We all love an Optimus Prime, and there's many, but it's then being able to go and get another figure and kind of go, all right, how are we going to take this one that's only ever had one release, say, in the past?
Oh, yeah.
And what we're going to bring it forward to the future now? You know, that must be a lot of fun from a design point of view.
I think so. I know Mark loves doing that as well, just because that's also his bread and butter. But for me, I love it when I can partial a figure into one of those obscure characters.
Right.
Nice.
That is just like, oh, okay, I only have this much tooling. What can I do? Can I do like, I don't know, like it almost gets a little sinister. It's like, can I do it? Yes, I can. Like, no one can stop me.
Well, because I got to tell you, I was, and I know it's not out yet, but I was obviously super impressed with the Zaran and Flame 2-pack, you know, as a good example of your work. But the tooling on that and the retooling, I think, was incredible because obviously so many people, and I know we emailed about it, but so many people were like expecting an eventual Zaran toy might be a Megatron of some sort.
Because of the design, right?
Exactly, yeah, because the original comic design, his first appearance anyway, the head was kind of loosely based off, like they basically traced the Megatron panel, I think.
Yeah, even the body.
With the waffle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with the waffle mouth, the kind of Iron Man mouth, And so I think people just sort of put two and two together and were like, oh, well, it's obviously going to be a Megatron then. But to me, it's fascinating how you choose molds for that kind of treatment, because I never would have imagined that Game of Megatron as a Flame, and I never would have imagined Refractor as a Zaran, you know? So does it take a lot of thought to I presume it must do, to kind of go into what are we going to use here?
Yes, and also, like, Mark and I bounce ideas off of each other. It's always great to have another opinion. And also just talking with TakaraTomy about stuff like that, like, this is what I'm thinking. But doing research, even though I am a designer, I consider myself more of like a steward of the brand, where it's like, I'm just trying to do the best that I can with what I have. So, okay, I want to do Zaran and I want to do Flame. What's the best way to do this? Well, okay, Flame usually was shown a little bit bigger than Zaran, and it's like, okay, so he's supposed to be small. What bodies do I have at Deluxe that are small that I can work from? Like, that's kind of where it starts from.
And so when you're like kind of digging into that process, then you've got, obviously you've got a team. So what is that process? If you're getting, it's like, I'm going to make this character into the toy, then what would be the first stage that you would go through for like bringing a toy to life?
Like, are we starting from scratch? Or
okay. I'm really interested. Yeah, I'm starting from scratch.
Okay.
So like,
let's do
what's
it.
involved in this process?
So if we're starting from scratch, then it's kind of gathering as much reference material as possible, right? Checking out, like, if we're going with like a G1 character, checking out the G1 height charts, things of that, like seeing like what the original like animation design was compared to the comic design, trying to gather as much material as possible there and kind of compiling it, and then seeing what scale, I guess, best represents and fits that character. Can it fit in this budget of a Voyager, a Leader? What does it have to be in? That's usually where the drawing comes in as well, where it's like, okay, we need to do sort of a modern interpretation of this character. If it's a partial, I usually have CAD of the previous body that I want to use, but I'll delete the parts that I know I'm swapping out, and then I'll just kind of draw over it. And then from there, it's kind of getting everybody else to hold hands, like our engineers, our marketers, being like, yeah, okay, we're going to do this character, kick it off to TakaraTomy. They ruminate on it, they look at it, and they'll be like, okay, yeah, this is doable, this is how we think it is doable. And that's kind of like, and then the back and forth really starts going.
So when I'm kind of fascinated about this, because obviously there's different stages there that are gonna then potentially your vision of what you're trying to do, but then as soon as it becomes like the actual parts and the molding and that, and then are you aware of limitations? You're kind of working towards that as a kind of like, all right, well, I know the process of how this is going to be made.
Yeah, yes and no.
Yeah.
And So more often than not, like there's a normal kind of like part limit that you know of. Like, I can afford this many pieces at a deluxe because this is what can fit inside of a tool.
Right. Yeah.
So I say this because there was a figure very recently that we were working on that it's like, it has to be a Voyager. And it's like, no, we can get it to deluxe. But usually then after we start designing, what ends up happening is, and we actually like grow like a prototype of it to actually make sure that it can transform. And that's usually where we check a lot of like QA concerns, breakages, things like that. But a lot of modification also happens then where it's like, okay, there's not a lot of strength in these biceps. Like we might actually have to fuse these pieces together to make it work better. You may lose a bit of articulation to do this, but it's the only way to do it to pass our QA standards. Like there's stuff like that. There is always a lot of back and forth. And I guess attitude is always something that's very important in something like this, where it's like, it's really important to go with the flow. Like definitely fight for what you're passionate about, but it's like, don't throw a hissy fit about like losing something like that. Like,
yeah, that's understandable.
Like if you end up having to lose like a piece of articulation somewhere or something like that, just because like this is what we need to do to make it so it was moldable and feasible. It's like, I don't want to fight everybody over that. I just want to make sure that this is the best toy that it can be. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah,
but I guess there must be a lot of considerations around like safety, and I know there's all kinds of like drop tests and this kind of stuff that goes on later as well. So the I don't know, from an outsider perspective, it always seems to me that when it comes to the design phase, there must be so many kind of complications and little extra considerations to make when you're planning these things out that must come back and just be like, no, well, actually, we can't do it that way because of this or that or the other.
Yeah.
And it must be a headache at times.
I mean, I actually joke a lot internally that it's like usually your concept art's like, and it has lasers. And
exactly.
Like all like, you go as bombastic and as far as possible, and then it's like, okay, and now down to
reality.
Exactly.
It's a funny thing though when you're doing design though, that it's like, although that can be constraining, it can also kind of make you produce the kind of best work because you're working to these limitations, which means you kind of push it. Whereas if you could do anything, it's kind of like, well, we could do anything and it doesn't need to be safe. And it's not, if someone drops it, it's going to break and all that kind of, but so those factors can kind of make it in a way more satisfying as well.
Oh yeah.
Is that true?
I mean, I would look at third-party figures where it's like they're made of like 45 hinges in a bicep or something like that, just to make sure to get that unique animation shape. And it's like, is this fun to play with? Like,
we have those conversations. Yeah, it's just like it may look great, but it is a nightmare.
We talk about that a lot, for example.
Yeah.
So with lines like Studio Series Generations, then does that really factor in strongly? It's like, what's it like to play with? Because in the old days, in sort of the main lines, you would have like lights and sounds and different sort of kind of crazy gimmicks. Specifically for kids, wasn't it? And whereas with the Generations and Studio Series stuff, it feels very more collector targeted, but do you still, when you put it in, it's like, man, how much fun is this to pick up and play with? Is that like the central consideration still?
I definitely still think it is, just because
that's cool.
You're making an action figure, and if it can't do action figure-esque things, then is it going to be fun to play with? Like, I mean, the Optimus Prime, the Commander Optimus Prime, like I love this thing to death.
Rubbing that in.
Oh, I'm sorry. It should be out. It should be out now, right?
I know none of us got it. None of us got it.
I'm so sorry.
I missed on the pre-orders, Evan. Thank you.
Honestly, we all missed the pre-orders. How bad are we running a Transformers podcast?
It wasn't my intent to rub it in.
Somebody else has outflexed Sixo on this podcast.
I know.
Amazing.
Is this what it's like? My God.
I remember this.
I don't know if it's fair when it was like I was a designer on it, but yeah.
No, that's great. No, tell us.
This is just a fun toy to play with, right? Like,
that's cool.
The Ultra Magnus as well. Like, and I think that's always kind of the goal, is to make sure that it is fun to play with. As a kid, I did not particularly like lights and sounds, but that's what our kid line is for. It has more of those gimmicks as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, with the Optimus is a good example, actually, because it feels like there's some design influence from the Masterpiece as well in there, the MP44. Is that fair to say? Is that like a conscious thing, or is like taking some of that, like learning from figures that have come before when you're making a character like that?
Yeah, constantly. Normally when we like kick something off, usually we'll pop in a bunch of reference of like, just like this from this figure.
Right.
And I know there's a San Diego Comic-Con interview where I got Tomo-san on, who was the TakaraTomy designer on this, and we were kind of talking about that. that yes, there definitely was some learning, some influence taken from MP44. I love MP4. Is he off camera? Yeah, he's like over
I
here.
can't quite see him. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
there
okay.
somewhere.
So he is over there. And I love that figure to death. It takes a half hour to transform it.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
But it looks so beautiful.
It does.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
It's nice.
But yeah, I do feel like transformation should be fun, right?
Yeah. But I think MP44 is interesting because I've always said this, that to me, I still think that MP44, it does take half an hour to transform, but it's still, everything glides and clicks and moves as you would want it to, you know?
It feels solid. Yeah,
exactly. It's never... It's one of those that you have to want to transform it, obviously, and you have to be prepared for that process. But it's not like one that you're just going to pick up and do idly. But at the same time, I never get to a point with it where I'm like stressed, do you know what I mean? Or feeling like frustrated because bits won't click together or anything like that. And I think that to me is always, I mean, you mentioned about, third party stuff, and we won't badge you on that, obviously, because I know that's, not the topic, but it's a good example because I think you see sometimes, and that's what we've said before, is that those learnings are not there, if that makes sense, for that kind of stuff necessarily. Whereas with a lot of the stuff from yourselves and Takara, you get the feeling that actually, there is that kind of consideration of how's this actually going to work? Is this going to be pleasurable to pick up and play with as such?
And then it also goes back to Jason's comment about like we had to work within the limitations that we had, and that sometimes is just how the figure turns out, and you're just, I don't know, sometimes simpler can be better. So.
Yeah, it's true. We came up in conversation with us recently. We were talking about like, as I'll get Masterpiece, and I'll get Masterpiece because there will be a certain level of transformation that I want to sit down, and I'm happily going to spend like 30, 40 minutes transforming Masterpiece Sunstreaker because I enjoy it, and it was. I remember when I got that figure, I absolutely love it. But equally, I'll go and grab the kind of Combiner Wars Sunstreaker and like click, 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 and then just be zooming it around and just having fun with it. And they've got different reasons to exist in a way, don't they? That one is
100%, yeah,
and that's part of. And this is coming from like one toy line, which always fascinates me, and I love about that is that we can have that diversity of kind of transformation across two different things. So it makes for an interesting and fun time.
Yeah.
One thing that I was wondering as well, so let's dial back a wee bit, Evan, because we've not talked about your background and coming into Transformers as well. So what's your kind of, give us a little background on your kind of childhood memories, your favorites, that kind of stuff for you.
Okay. For just Transformers in general?
Yeah, Transformers. What was your entry point for you?
So it was the G1 cartoon. So like some of my earliest memories are, because it was in syndication, it was on television with episodes of Voltron. And I just immediately fell in love with it. We had family friends that were older that had a couple toys. So my first Transformer toy was actually Skyfire / Jetfire. Because they just gave it to us, and it was like, here you go.
What an entry point!
Yeah, that is,
one, that figure is amazing, and it's also just like a very good and sturdy figure. A little later in life, my brother was playing with it and he popped off the arm, and I remember being so angry about it. Now,
brothers,
he bought me another one at one point, like when I was a teenager, to like make up for it. But now as an adult, I can look at it and be like, oh, that's how they just made the arm joint with a spring and a screw. So the more that you rotate it, the easier it pops off. Why? Yeah.
Do you remember did you ever get your fingernails bashed in from the landing gear? Do you remember that at all?
No, I never did, I think.
Oh,
comes keen, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you're pulling nails off. Again, this was
my God.
Nail.
Sounds
awful. It's like my overriding
out.
memory of that toy. Yeah. As you do the landing gear and it just swings up and hits you in the
because
finger or whatever.
I forget the landing gear's die cast, isn't it? Just
of
course.
Yeah,
so
that's right,
that's why. But that was kind of my entry point, and then I was in for life. Like ever since then, I've always sort of watched and been a part of it.
And was your brother into it as well? Was he?
Yeah, more like I forced him to be.
Was he younger? Or
he's a younger
brother. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so he's born like very late 80s, early 90s. So, but when brothers watch something, they watch it together.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So and many of our like G1 toys we kind of shared and things like that. I was also lucky enough that I grew up next to like a collectible toy shop that was like 10 minutes away.
What?
So it was very easy for me to access a lot of G1 toys as I was growing up. And so like birthdays, things like that, like God, I think back to some of the prices that we paid for some of these.
Yeah,
It's here's a complete Stunticon set for $60, with tech specs, and I'm just like, yes, thank you.
It's when you see pictures of like old botcons or whatever, and you see like pictures of the dealer tables, and when you can see the prices in the pictures, and you're just like, what? It's insane.
There was one that I saw the other day on a social platform, shall we say, and it was just an image of a Toys R Us, and it was one wall was Star Wars figures and the other was Transformers, and I was trying to pinch zoom in to see what the pricing labels were. But I just knew it'd be too much. I'd be like, oh no. And then we had this happening the other day on our Patreon, but people were sharing their boxes, the G1 boxes that they had, and the amount of like stickered price labels that were on there that started at like $12.99, and then it was £9, and then it was £6. And these are for like, Brainstorm or something like that, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is painful to see.
I recovered a binder at work that actually has like sales data that goes back to like 1985. So it lists like the Dinobots, but Dino was spelled DYNO because I'm assuming the person didn't know how to spell it back then or whatever. But then they're like Dinobots, $6.99 each, and then it sold like how many units sold, and I just was like, oh my god!
Oh no,
that's incredible.
It is. It's really good.
It is.
So, what was your in terms of like childhood memories and stuff? Then, did you have any like particular favorites? I know you mentioned obviously Jetfire, what have you, but were there toys that like really stood out to you as being like this is my toy, this is my guy?
So there were two. I believe his name is Combat Hero Optimus Prime. I think that's what everybody calls him. Because I remember being so infatuated with the fact that he had knees and separate legs, and you could rotate him anyway. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun with this. And then
there's
G1
that G2 revelation again of like joints and things. So
exactly. And then G1 Tracks as well that is a toy
classic
that I played with so much that I would break it, and then I would buy a new one to replace it.
That's a good one.
That was a favorite.
The longevity of these figures as well. And we've talked a little bit about age and stuff like that. It's 40th anniversary this year, obviously, as well. I have a lot of my collection from when I was a kid, and it was my brother's and mine. So I have an older brother, so I've still got his G1 Megatron, and and it's still standing. It's in pretty good condition. I think it's partly because we moved home so much. More moving stories of me, but my G1 Bumblebee that I have, that was my first one, and that's the one that I kind of cover, and the one that I would always keep. I always talk about keeping that as well. But the longevity of these toys, they goes back to what you're saying about when you're designing stuff now, and is that a consideration now? What you're creating something, obviously what's going into the toy, and then 40 years from now, where someone else is going to be on a pod having a chat about toys that you've designed. Does that ever cross your mind?
Oh God, that's cosmic horror stuff right there. I do think that is a consideration, especially with how we, like when we're designing and how we sandwich our parts between different types of plastic. So we have like our standard ABS, and then we have like the nylon PA as well, which is like the plastic that we can't paint, that comes off a little bit more matte. But that is to help the joints and make sure that they last longer. It definitely is a consideration that we try and make sure that they can last. Mm-hmm. Clear hinges be damned. We do what we can and try.
Yeah, totally. There is a flip to that though as well, though, that now some of them, that like the diecast G1 stuff in particular, is just seizing, so I don't go near some of them anymore as well, which is part of it. But it's kind of, we chatted about it on the pod the other week about like just how this stuff is lasting. But there's a lifetime to anything, isn't there? I think that's what needs to be there.
For sure. And the conditions that you kept it in, like I live in a cave, so thankfully I don't have like sunlight coming in and like warping all their colors, except for my Siren figure. And I don't know what happened because he was in a bin under my bed, but he looks like I like smoked nonstop.
Oh, really?
And it's like, what? Like his colors changed. It's like, what happened? What did I do?
A plastic bin, plastic tub, or
it was a plastic tub.
Heat.
I think
it's a temperature thing as well. As much, it happens a lot with vintage games consoles. People find like old consoles that have never been opened, and they'll open them 30 years later, and instead of being
Super
white,
Nintendo is now
they're like very dark nicotine yellow, but it's the heat as much as apparently.
Yeah, it's annoying that you can have all of this stuff in pristine condition, like a nice minty white Jetfire and whatever else, and have no sunlight in the room whatsoever, and it'll still yellow. That's the thing. It's just like if it's near a radiator, or particularly like plastic tubs, I think are meant to accentuate it as well.
But in 1984, nobody was thinking like, were they? They were like,
no, that's exactly.
These guys are going to have these in 40 years' time.
Yeah,
no. Make sure they stay bright white.
Well, I mean, no one's going to get emotionally attached to these characters. Yeah. We're just going to kill them all off.
Exactly. That's it. It's quite fascinating that, you know, when we look back and there's the three toy lines. This was Lego, Star Wars, and Transformers that have managed to stay the test of time as well. On the kind of the stuff that you would dream of doing, then, Evan. So if you were like, what would be a dream toy that you'd want to make
within Transformers?
Oh, interesting. We could widen it out if it's not in Transformers, but yeah, let's go Transformers first. Yeah.
No, it would probably still be Transformers. No, now you're putting me on the spot. I think I've spoken about this often. It's just like the not Microforce, the Multiforce.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Landcross, yeah, that's so much fun. And so when I was in high school is when I discovered like people were like fan subbing those series, and that's when I rediscovered them, and I was like, there's Transformer series I haven't seen. Like, you know, you get super excited about that. And I fell in love with their gimmick and the fact that they're a combiner. Like, they would be great to do. And we have Dino King coming, obviously. So at some point,
wait for that.
Yeah, wow, that's
fantastic box set with that as well. Bringing back the box sets, there's such a nostalgia for that. Like as soon as you see it, it pangs inside. It's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. Our package designer Amy is fantastic about that stuff. She does her research, and thank God she works for us.
Amazing work.
With Landcross, though, you could probably almost do them as like little core class figures, couldn't you? I mean, the originals are pretty small, the individual robots, and then they obviously combine together to form like a slightly larger robot and combine again.
I've certainly thought about it. Cool. There may or may not be several drawings of it, but I just don't know where we can put them in.
Yeah.
At some point, I'm hoping in the future we can get them out there.
There must be times like that, though, where you pitch something and Hasbro or someone says, no. Like, that's not going to happen. And are there specific examples like that you could maybe clue us into? That might maybe happen?
Yes and no, because sometimes what ends up happening is maybe the tool is being used somewhere else, so we can't use it. Okay. Funny story, the Flame and Zarin set, that was actually supposed to be purple open mouth Soundwave originally. Right. And it just turned out that I guess I'm just spilling the tea right here.
God.
Man,
but essentially, I'm so sorry. But essentially, the legacy, the legacy line wanted to have that proper Soundwave come out over there.
Yeah.
So that ended up being a higher priority than putting him in with the comic book. But obviously, we're still talking about him, so hopefully he'll be out there in the future.
That would be one I think a lot of people would be. I mean, that's a lot of people bring that up as like a sort of dream thing. So
I mean, we have to. It's so weird.
Yes.
And with the mouth and everything as well? You're going to give them the full amount?
That was the reason I only had one tool to Flame and Zarin. So, where it was just like, okay, this is what I have to work with. Oh God, what do I do? And so that's where that total thing just came from, where it was like, okay, we're going to do this then, and no one's going to stop me.
Amazing.
And it was just a complete left field thing, because they're just like, oh, the tooling's actually being used right now. You can't have that. You've got to come up with something else.
Yeah, pretty much. It was just deemed a higher priority to have it over on Legacy. And that happens every once in a while. Like sometimes like some things have to shift out due to timing, so then there's a little cascading effect of, oh, now we have to move a bunch of other things around. It just happens sometimes. That's all.
And then how far ahead are you working then? Are you looking to like 2025? Are you
2025 is done.
Oh, really? Wow.
Wow.
2026. It's about 2 years. 2026 is pretty much wrapped up, and then pretty much wrapped up as in we're still in development in a lot of those figures, but their development is wrapping up. 2027 is something that we're like starting planning on right now. So usually figure development wise is about 18 months, but planning wise, there's obviously a couple extra months in there to kind of like align everything up and make sure that we can kick everything off.
And out of interest, this probably isn't coming from your team, but are you looking to the community as well as a kind of guiding light, shall I say? You know, like what people are talking about that might kind of make you think, oh, maybe we should be looking over here at this at the moment. This figure,
it definitely comes up, especially with like what collections aren't complete, like what teams still need like a character or two to kind of complete them.
Turbo Masters. Turbo Masters. Come on, man.
I know. I need to get them out there.
Yes.
They're high on the priority. We just gotta, find the right spot for them.
The best G1 toys. Everybody loves the Turbo Masters.
Yeah, I mean, that's my G2 Optimus Prime.
Right.
With an open mouth.
Yeah. Exactly.
Always with mouths, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Thunderclash.
That's cool. It must be weird though when you see people talking about we really need X character, or we really need this thing, and you're secretly thinking it's already in the pipeline, or it's coming in a year's time, or whatever it may be.
Yes. It's always difficult to be straight faced about it when people are like, "What about this? What about this? What about this?" I'm like,
Yeah. So you're not going to answer this, are you? But retro reissues. So it's like we're constantly talking what molds are available, what might we see next.
I can answer some questions about it.
Okay.
Okay,
cool.
The retro reissues do very well for us, and we definitely want to do more with them. I will be honest, what has already come out is scraping the barrel on what is left and still around. However, from what you've seen, we announced the G1 Optimus Prime in animation colors at San Diego Comic-Con. The original trailer tools were actually lost and destroyed, but we actually developed and redesigned the G1 trailer.
Oh, wow.
So something going forward, we may just start trying to recreate some of the G1 molds to kind of get more of the retro toys back out there.
Which is so cool. I mean, that is... I can't. You mentioned this on message with me the other week, and I can't even tell you how excited I was at just the sort of smallest, tiniest implication that maybe
the doors creaked open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It really felt like just the foot was in there in the door of maybe they'll remake Wheeljack and Sunstreaker and all these guys, and put them out again.
They have a little bit of added complication of just the royalties to the car manufacturers and things like that. Yeah. But it's entirely possible. We were able to get G1 Hound back out there, right? We worked with Jeep to get him out, and I think he came out pretty nice in animation colors.
He did really well. Yeah. But that was an existing mold, I guess, wasn't it? That wasn't a recreation of any kind.
We did a tooling inventory, and we found that we still had him, and we were able to bring him back.
Yeah, because he was one of the bookbox reissues, wasn't he? A long time ago. That's the last time we'd seen it prior, the early 2000s.
I was going to say, even then, you're talking 20 years plus, and I'm guessing even some of those...
Stop aging us, man. Stop it.
It's inevitable, isn't it? It's inevitable.
2 years ago. But... It was 2 years ago, man.
Shame you guys don't have video on here so everybody can just see us turn to dust.
Yeah, exactly.
We will be Starscream from the movie.
I probably think it's VHS.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
So doing a mold inventory... honestly, the 11-year-old version of me just squealed with excitement, right? Because that would be going and trying to find these molds. Do they still exist? Where are they in the assume world? I'm assuming wherever they are, right? But then when you're actually going and finding this and then working out what you have, was that part of you and your team, or was that another team that's going off and doing that inventory?
So we work with TakaraTomy for that, and that's us and our engineers working with TakaraTomy and TakaraTomy Hong Kong, and them going through the factories and seeing hey, because I don't know how knowledgeable you are about tools, but they're essentially giant steel blocks.
Totally.
And then they all have serial numbers on the side. And so it's okay, what is the serial number? What is it aligned to? And then you'll get an Excel document that just says tires, gray car, and you're just okay.
Oh, right, really?
But then you'll get lucky, and then it's okay, these 6 are in a sequence, and this makes most of a figure. What is the figure? So it's things like that.
Okay, yeah, amazing.
I seem to recall you saying that some of the molds, some of the figures are only partially intact, right? I think it was Ironhide was mentioned, I think, as one where maybe some of the mold exists, but then maybe not some of the other plates or something like that. So you could only feasibly make half the toy.
Right. And then we would hopefully just recreate the rest of what is missing, which is entirely possible. But to be honest, Ironhide's not alone in that. Several of them are. We have pieces of them here and there. because I guess what everybody has to realize is like the tools are stored in like a warehouse, right? Like, think of Indiana Jones.
I was going to say that. That's exactly how I imagine it. Yeah.
And it is someone kind of going through and trying to find and locate like where these figures are from 40 years ago. And and at the time, I don't know if anybody was, I guess, trying to archive them as well as they could be.
Do you know, it's a miracle when you think about it that anything is being found. You know, because it's not
exciting.
It's really exciting. That's kind of what I mean. It's like, going into that kind of Indiana Jones vault, but that would be me going in to kind of looking for these molds and stuff like that. And it's not like you can just run off a mold as well, because it's obviously a huge process. So
it is.
You are reliant on that paper trail, really. Is that true?
Yeah.
To find it? Yeah.
That's more often than not. And then usually they need to be repaired slightly because they are old and things of that nature. But to answer your original question, I definitely think that more retro stuff is definitely possible. And I'm hoping we can do more in the future.
Great.
Ooh, that'd be exciting. Are there any,
yeah.
I don't know if you can say, but are there any that you would feasibly like to work on that you think would be like a bit of a dream for you? Or
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Because it's like I would go to Skyfire/Jetfire, but that's a legal nightmare that I do not want to touch.
Sort of off the table a little bit,
just a little bit. It's like we already have the Optimus Prime. We only just need to tool up the trailer to give you an Ultra Magnus. That would be fun. That
would be something.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I don't even know how you do Magnus though, because like would you? This is all hypothetical, of course. Maybe you've been working on this and you've just got good poker face. I don't know, but
I do not.
But like, you'd have to color the front of the trailer, right? Like when he's standing up for his robot mode, because he's got the kind of red trailer bed, if you like. But to be animation accurate, it would have to have white thighs and stuff like that. So would you just kind of paint it on there, or what would you do?
Yeah, probably. And I mean, like, it wouldn't even have to be animation accurate if we're just rerunning the toy again to be exact like G1.
Sure.
But, I mean, paint can go a long way. We can make it work. I'll make it work.
Yeah, for sure.
I like it. That's cool.
I suppose the big one, the most obvious one is a Grimlock, isn't it? That always feels like the
Dinobots are definitely the big ones.
Most iconic, one of the most iconic G1 toys. It's one of the ones that's never been reissued, obviously, because the mold's long lasting and gone. But it always feels like the one that's most glaring in the absence whenever reissues appear. That always feels like the one.
I completely agree with you. I definitely think that those would be high on a priority list.
I'd try to check that facial expression, honestly.
Yeah, totally.
See any kind of hint. Is it a consideration as well that, like you've mentioned about, new tooling and things like that, that potentially then you've got, I don't know, 20 or more years worth of reissues then out of that kind of toy as well?
It definitely is. Like, it's like, okay, what program can we use these in? When are we going to launch like a retro program to put them in? Okay, we can cycle this every 5 years. Like, it definitely comes up, and it's definitely part of the thinking that goes behind doing something like that.
Yeah. This then brings us back to TakaraTomy as well, though, and then we've got Missing Link at the moment as well.
Yeah.
So we're getting that. So, like, I would love to see both retro OG stuff and Missing Link hand in hand, within the next few years or whatever. There'd just be something really fun about that. But I suppose as well, then it's bringing that G1 retro stuff into the hands of kids again as well, because it always breaks my heart a little bit when I go into different auction sites and adult collectors only, that's what it's labeled as, and it's like, okay, I see your point, but it is a toy, and
toys are meant to be played with.
Totally. But that's the thing, that the retro line would allow for that, wouldn't it? It would bring it back to...
It definitely would, and I definitely do love Missing Link. Like, it is such a fantastic line.
I love the fact you can just turn around and just pick that out straight away. We all know exactly where our collection...
everything
is in our collection. It's the best, isn't it? It's like, I know exactly where it is. Yeah.
We all adore the Missing Link, but when it was seeing the recently announced reissue of the vintage toy, because it's such a special, nostalgic toy on its own, to see it in new colours and to be able to experience it again fresh like that.
There is something about it.
It is probably the greatest toy ever made, and there's just something special about it. Like the Missing Link one is incredible, and it's like what you imagined it was like a kid. But then when you get that one that is like what you had as a kid, it's like,
especially if you lost
blanket.
That toy through something, and this is your chance to get it back again. I mean, that's one of the things about all this, is that, like, there's a lot of memories that are attached to these physical objects, right? Things like that. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. And I just I hope it makes people happy. That's all.
It definitely does.
There's something, we've swapped this with stories as well, but there's definitely something about when people visit my robot room and they'll come in and their first reaction will be one of kind of stunned awe.
Yeah.
I get that. And some swearing, probably quite a lot as well. I always remember one of the politest mums ever coming into the room, and she just walked in and her son was going, come and see Sebastian's daddy's Transformers collection. She walked into the room and she just went, all right, so have you got hell? And it was the best reaction ever. And then she switched to, do you have a blue one with like a little spiky bit on the top? And I went, you mean Blur, this one? And then that was it. She was gone. Yeah. She was like flashback to her brother and her playing. And it was lovely. It was so nice. It just brought her back to this moment in time, which I think is beautiful. That's what a toy can do as well.
That is a similar story I had where like my stepmother and my father were coming to visit, and they come in and they're like, oh, okay, I've heard stories of your collection. This isn't so bad. And it's like, this is not the room with the collection. And then like they go into the room with the collection. She just sat down in the chair. It's just like, oh.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you ever just kind of go, well, this is my job as well, you know? So it's like, it's a life.
I mean, this was before that even, but yeah.
Right. Okay, yeah, true. Good point. Yeah. Valid. That's
I had a funny one. So recently we had a bloke in and he had to check, there was a thing downstairs with radiators and stuff, and he was like, oh, can I check the radiator in your room upstairs? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it's the room with all the toys in. And we just literally walked in and he didn't say anything, and he was just looking at the radiator and then just turned around and went, you collect toys then? And I was like, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
You just gone, nope.
A little bit.
No.
Nope. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're talking about, mate, yeah.
These were here. I moved in, it was like this.
It was so funny, honestly. So
it's like, what brilliant. Toys?
Yeah, exactly. Toys? What? No. These are my sons. But it's funny that you mentioned, Evan, about obviously, you know, having a lot of Transformers and everything before working on the brand. I mean, actually, just going back to you for a sec, that was a question I had, was whether, you know, kind of the journey, if you like, from being a collector and a fan and everything else to then working on the brand. Was it something that firstly, like, how did you get working for Hasbro? But then when it came time to be on Transformers, was it like, yes, please? Or was it like, yeah, I guess so? Do you know what I mean? I mean, what was... Was it a dream come true? I don't know.
Yes, this is going to be a bit of a long story, I suppose, because my way in was a bit unorthodox. So, one, I'm originally from Ohio. I don't know how well versed you are in American geography.
A little bit.
So, Cincinnati, Ohio is where Kenner used to be.
Right, of
and
course,
that's where I'm from. So, there's a lot of overlap in people who are from Ohio, from Kenner specifically, that still work at Hasbro. That I was completely unaware of. I went to college in the Columbus College of Art and Design, and essentially there was a bunch of alumni from like that now work at Hasbro that would come and be like, hey, we're going to have a toy sculpting competition for your year. The top 5 get to interview with Hasbro. My roommate at the time, who became one of my closest friends, Corey, who is the designer for the Classified series, like for G.I. Joe, and then he also did the Lightning collection for Power Rangers. He was a sculptor for them. He was just like, I'm going to be a toy designer. I am going to work at Hasbro. And I kind of latched onto his coattails. So these Hasbro alumni people came and they were like, okay, we're going to have this competition, sculpt an action figure. And this was like hand sculpting and wax and things like that, which is not what we do anymore. But I made a robot dude. It's so funny because when I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do something with art. I just wanted to draw.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to end up like, I don't know, being like a terrible comic book artist or something like that. Just because like I realized very quickly, it's like, I am not fast enough to be a comic book artist. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then this toy competition thing happened, and I got top 5, so I was allowed to interview with Hasbro for a temp position. I didn't end up getting it, but my friend Corey did. And I graduated. I ended up doing a bunch of art jobs like around school in Ohio. So I worked for like a game studio for a year. I then worked for like a consulting company doing art for them for a couple of years. And my friend Corey reached back out to me and he's like, hey, I'm working at Hasbro. I'm working on a brand called Creo, which is like their building block, like Lego-esque system. They have a Transformer segment. You should definitely apply for this. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it. I applied, I got in, I moved out here. I was a temp for like 3 years, like working for them. I very quickly kind of established myself as like I know a thing or two about Transformers.
Yeah, I was going to say.
They hired me on. They hired me on particularly because there was a conversation that ended up happening where I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Creo line at all, but
yeah.
Okay.
I have many.
Really? Okay.
I used to have all of the combiners and all of the little mini.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, because the mini, yeah. I don't know if you can see them, but I still have like the yearbooks that they had back then.
Yeah, those. But
I still have the Mirage set because it's like one of the last times you see them as a proper F1 car like that. So
the little like the little $10. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So there was a conversation that happened at like a lunch table at Creo. It's like, well, we can never do transforming Transformers. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I can do that right now. And they were like, what? No way. And it was like, by the end of the day, I had mocked up like 6 of them for them. I was just like, here you go. And they were like, oh, okay, we got to make this happen. And so that then became like the Battle Changer line, which was like a $10 subline where they were actually buildable and they could transform. I think they only ended up releasing in Canada, which is a little depressing, but that was kind of like my introduction to actual toy design. And it also got me hired. When I got hired was almost immediately when Creo was kind of like being defunct. But my boss was then being moved over to the Marvel team. And he was like, Evan, you're coming with me to the Marvel team. And I was like, okay. So then I was moved over to Marvel and I worked under Dwight Stahl, who does all the Marvel Legends figures. I worked on the Black Panther movie toys and then like the first Infinity War action figure line. I was working on Marvel. It was pretty freaking awesome.
That's amazing.
And I think at that point I didn't think I would ever be able to work on Transformers. But then I was grabbed and moved again because someone was leaving and they needed someone to fill his spot. And it was on the robotics team. And what that meant was you work on projects that are kind of all over the place and don't really have any specified area. So that was Zoids, that was Transformers exclusives, and that was like Yokai Watch and a bunch of like other weird stuff. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm in, here we go. So that was my first start of working on Transformers stuff and working with the TakaraTomy team. And then that was also the time when we were bringing over Zoids Wilds, I think is what it was in Japanese, which I have a line of Zoids like up there. Cool. I was a hardcore Zoids kid, so I was super excited. Yeah. I think the conversation actually went like, does anyone in Hasbro remember Zoids? And I think I raised my hand. And then I think they were just like, he's our guy. So I was super happy to work on that. But then there was another shift internally inside Hasbro, and I was moved to Star Wars. And I was like, okay, yeah, I enjoy the Star Wars films. Happy to be here. I was on Star Wars for about like 6 months before there was another shift. And then they put me back on Zoids, and then they put me on Beyblade. And I was like, okay, sure, this is fine. And then after that happened, John Warden became my boss. And then he started feeding me some Transformers work as well. And I was like, okay, this is great. But then I was juggling like 3 brands at the time. Wow. So that was a lot. And then as things do with a company, there was another shift, and I was moved to only be on Beyblade. And then this is when Mark and Lenny kind of came and joined the Transformer team. But they were handling G.I. Joe and Transformers all at once. They were swamped, and so they reached out and asked and was like, hey, can you come back on Transformers and handle Studio Series? And I was like, absolutely. I'm more than happy to do that. And then after that, it was like, okay, I would like to just be on Transformers, please. And then that eventually did happen, which was nice. But to answer your original question of was it a dream come true, I had been moved around so often, and I was referred to a lot as like, you're like the perfect gap filler. We can just put you on any brand and you just like fill in and you just get going. And I'm just like, thanks, this is great. I was telling my dad, it's like, oh yeah, they moved me to Transformers. And he's like, you're on Transformers. Aren't you like super excited? And I paused. I was like, oh yeah, I am. Like,
I love those.
That was like, oh yeah. Like I look over at my wall that's just Transformers. So it's like, oh yeah. But yeah, that was super exciting. And this was obviously like, I've been with Hasbro for about 13 years. So this was over that whole length.
That's brilliant. I love that.
What story?
I mean, I'm just thinking about like your 11-year-old self though. You know, if you'd said, you're playing Transformers and it's like, and you're going to be designing these in the future, you know.
That gaslighting bastard. I
can't believe you were that close to Kenner. I'm a huge Kenner fan. Like vintage toys. So
Yeah.
from that area, it's like we do like a little separate mini podcast for the Patreon stuff, and it's called Tapman, and I talk about other toy lines. And Kenner features regularly. It's one of those. Kenner and Hasbro. It's like the two best toy companies ever.
I mean, yeah, that's when you had
so
like
nostalgic.
the classic Batman action figures that like Mark Boudreau worked on back in the day. He's like the big name Star Wars designer. It's pretty incredible. I do often wonder. It's like, oh man, if Hasbro just would have moved to Cincinnati, I could still be near my family.
That'd be nice.
That would have been nice. There are like a bunch of weird connections there because it's like I had a great aunt that taught like a couple people at Hasbro piano because they were also from that area, and it was like, wait, you know
so
Jewel?
weird.
And then it's like, why do you know Jewel? It's like she's like my second cousin. Like I don't know. There's like a bunch of weird stuff about that.
That's there's a 1 degree of separation that happens quite a lot just in life in general, but even now within the Transformers community, and I'm finding that overlapping. You know, and I've had chats with people like Nick Roach, for example, and there's an overlap into people that he knows that then I know, and that 1 degree of separation. But I suppose that the thing is though that we all. It's not chaos theory at all or anything, is it? It's just that we're all into this, so we all kind of gravitate towards the same people and the same community as part of that. And I love that as well. You know, in fact, in Hasbro now, is there? I can imagine you're not. Well, we know of BMAC obviously as well, but you're not going to be the only fan as well, because that's the whole thing. That now we've got fans coming in that are doing what you're doing and working on it and doing that.
We're certainly trying to. Yeah.
But is that kind of a factor within Hasbro where there's a lot of fans, or is it quite unique? Because obviously you're a next level fan.
So I would definitely say that every brand is definitely like a lot of the lead designers are humongous fans of it. Like on Star Wars and Marvel, like things of that. Like I know those designers well, and they are very passionate fans about what they work on, about that brand. They want to make sure they get every nook and detail correct. So I don't think it's a rare thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you switch to the other departments, like maybe your marketers and your engineers, they are more casual fans, but they are still fans. But I definitely do think that Hasbro is a business that is run by the passion of fans. And
that's cool.
Which is really good.
It shows.
It does show. And I think that's important to hear as well, because obviously in the fandom, you get lots of different opinions and stuff like that. But everything you're saying tonight is about that you love this brand, you love Transformers, and each thing you're trying to do is just make something that we'll all love, that we'll all enjoy. And
that's the goal.
That's the goal. And that's an individual taste, obviously. But I just love that. It's happening so much with people that I know at the moment, that I've got friends that are working on like the MCU, and someone like yourself that's at Hasbro, and there's just something really nice about that when I look at my son and he's talking to me about stuff and what you end up doing in the future, you know, and working on something this awesome. Brilliant. It's so good.
I mean, like, my understanding from listening to the podcast is that you've worked in video games, you've worked in animation and things of that nature. Is that correct? Like,
that's it. Yes, exactly. So I was art school as well. I did animation, and then, but I always, it was a classic thing: painting, wanted it to move, did animation, wanted it to be interactive, started making games, and that was the thing. And funnily enough, my mentor said to me one day, he's like, "Would you ever want to work at Hasbro? Though? What if you could do something with Hasbro?" And I remember thinking, it's like, oh no, I don't know if I could cross the stream. I don't know what that would mean. You know, that was a bit too much. You know,
I mean, I didn't study toy design, but a lot of like my knowledge that came from toys was actually building robot model kits, because a lot of that translated over to how a toy is made, and it's just a lot of it is just being observant, asking questions, and just kind of listening to those around you and kind of just learning on the job.
Yeah, I think, the driver for me was just what we talked about earlier, which is that creativity and that challenge of being creative, coming up with something new. And it never ceases to amaze me. It's something we talk about at length on the pod, but like how many versions of Optimus Prime we'll get, or how many versions
this year or every year.
Well, exactly.
Especially this year.
Rodimus, and I have a lot. Yeah, not as many as other fans, but you know, it's but they're all got their own kind of unique twist to it and changes and all this kind of stuff, and never ceases to amaze me that the creativity can keep coming out of that as well, which is really nice to see, really good to see. Which brings me nicely to the Studio Series stuff as well, that obviously you've worked on. So out of that line, we've talked about Optimus, but you did stuff from the movie as well for like kind of Bayform and stuff. How was it working on that line when you came into it then for like doing something that was kind of that level, shall we say?
It's a bit different, just mostly because we have like movie CAD as well.
Of course, yeah,
and that is incredibly helpful. It is interesting because obviously we have to go through like the car manufacturers as well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of touch points there where they want to make sure that the vehicle is represented as best as possible in toy form. And so you talk a lot of back and forth with them and they're like, okay, well, what is this piece here? Why is it like this? And it's like, well, that's a hinge so that this folds out and then it can become a foot and things like that. And you have to try and find like a decent balance there. That was a good learning opportunity there, was making sure like they want to make sure that the car mode is pristine and is the best looking thing, but it's like, but I've got to balance out the deco to make sure that the robot also has some good paint on it too. So it is an interesting experience.
I remember you guys talking about like the Porsche alternate mode with like Mirage, for example, for Rise of the Beasts, and that being like a particular challenge because of the car mode and like trying to get it to the way that it eventually turned into the robot, and that being a particular challenge. So
when it's like a movie and they can do like, I mean, it's the same with the animation where it's all just, they can make whatever they want happen. Like if you look back at, Age of Extinction and it's like, hey, they turn into cubes and they fly away and they're a robot. And you're like, whoa, we can't make a toy of that. But I guess that brings with it the other challenge of timing of when we get assets from a studio as well. And just trying to match the most recent assets, but movies can update very quickly and change details and things like that. So sometimes like when our figure comes out, because obviously we're developing 18 months in advance, like there'll be a couple details off because it got updated along the way and you just kind of have to roll with it.
It's always been that way though, hasn't it? I mean, especially when you look back to like the 80s again, you can totally see how toys were made at a point in development on the film, for example, or whatever it might be.
And the Floro Deary designs came in.
Exactly. They continue evolving and whatever else. I think we're kind of more aware of that stuff now, if anything.
That's always been the case with lots of toy lines, because like with Batman, all of those things, you will see toys that have come out based on early versions, weren't they? Like concept art characters, like even the Jurassic Park kind of line, all of the figures look nothing like the characters from the film because they're all based on early concept art before they changed them. So that's the thing we're all used to, wasn't it? Is things being different, and I think it's still the same now. It's kind of part of the charm of the toys, isn't it?
I suppose so.
They're their own unique things.
I also think about how we had a bunch of like rated R toy lines when we were kids, when it was like Aliens and RoboCop. Terminator. And it's like, I hope kids were not watching this movie. But
that bog. My son has an Alien Queen that he got when he was quite little, and I remember seeing it in the same aisle with Transformers. Going, really? Is that what it was? It was the cuddly.
Well, you bought it. I was thinking this.
I thought I was going to get it, and then he went to him. It was a confusing time. It was the cuddly face hugger that was the really confusing one. It was like this cuddly toy face hugger. I'm like, really? Okay,
it's not nightmare fuel. Okay,
so funny. Totally.
I mean, I guess actually that brings me nicely onto a question I did want to ask, which is courted a lot of conversation online recently. And if you can't talk too much about this, it's fine. But talking about like R-rated toys and things, obviously there's a lot of chat about like a gun mode Megatron that comes up perpetually, in Transformers world. You were obviously quoted recently, I don't know if you know this, but you were quoted as having said that if you did make a Studio Series Megatron, it would be a tank. And that has caused like a load of conversation online from people that are very pro that idea and people that are like, no, it must be a gun, otherwise don't make it, why would you make it, kind of thing. And it seems to have really kind of caused this rift. I don't know how much you're able to say, but I just thought it was an interesting topic because the gun mode of Megatron, of course, is something that was a thing in the 80s, but it feels like it's sort of even 40 years later created this problem to overcome in a weird way. I don't know if that's kind of how it's seen, or I don't know. What's your take?
Yes, I definitely did say that, and I've been saying it for the last couple of years. Whenever that question does come up, so it is always surprised, like because I know what set this off was I got a DM message in my Instagram, and I was like, if it happens, this is how it's going to be. I've always tried to be very honest about that because obviously we can't, right?
And
I definitely understand like both sides of the argument. Like, I know that people want what was there, like what happened in the show. I absolutely understand that. And the fact that a Masterpiece Megatron came out 10 years ago, and in order for it to even ship to America, they had to orange cap it, and it was a whole mess. No, it's not happening again. Like, obviously, back in the 90s is when I think everybody first kind of realized Megatron can't be a gun ever again, right? That's when he first started to become a tank, and it's the way it has to be. Gun laws, toy gun laws, there's so much that you have to take into consideration. If it did happen, I think even like that Voyager Universe figure from back in the day, that was like a Nerf gun. Then, classics. I don't think classics. I don't think we could ever even do that again, because I think like he would have to be completely neon green or neon yellow at this point to be not considered like gun colors and be more toyetic.
Well, this was it. I know there was an abandoned, I think it was going to be a Toys R Us exclusive reissue of the G1 toy at one stage, which was, I don't know if you've seen it, but it was like orange and blue, like blue chrome. There's been some pictures shared of it online.
Safety Megatron.
That's
what it's called.
It really is.
Safety dance
like
Megatron.
Bright orange and sort of like a really kind of jazzy, shiny blue chrome almost. And that was, as a reissue of the G1 toy. And that was obviously shelved because even in those colors, it was like, no, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
It happens for everything, doesn't it? Because there was the pulse rifle from Aliens. Somebody made a replica. I can't remember which company it was. It was like a crowdfunded thing, but it had to be done in like bright yellow, not like the original green of the thing, for the same reason. And that's the world we live in now, and it sort of makes sense, doesn't it? That guns shouldn't look like real guns.
It does. And we do talk about it every once in a while, just like BMAC had a idea of just like, well, what if we HasLabbed a G1 Megatron, but we molded it all like purple clear to kind of make it seem like it's like the Unicron Herald scene where he's being turned into Galvatron. Cool. That might be a way to get around it because that would hopefully be enough toyetic colors that we would be okay. But obviously we're just legally constrained in that area. So
and he's been a tank now more than a gun for so long. He's great as a tank.
He's great as a helicopter. He's great as a jet.
Think of animated
dinosaur.
He's a transformer. He can be whatever. He can be whatever he wants. Really.
I always say about it though that I think in a way, if Megatron had been a tank from day dot, it wouldn't have been as interesting because it wouldn't have led to this thing now where actually he is all of these different things. That he pops up as a tank, as a helicopter, as a race car, as a dinosaur, as a hand, a shoe,
alrighty, hand,
whatever else. So I think it's kind of fascinating that Transformers, that it had this thing where obviously the characters change modes, which is fairly unique, not completely, but the main bad guy turned into this weapon that then actually cannot be released as a toy in the modern day, if you like. It's created this situation where actually it's so unique in a way that I think it's also kind of led to this weird creativity at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, like he's so bad. We can never.
How many bad things can he be?
Exactly. Interesting.
It's funny that you mentioned HasLab because I have even had. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I think there's a lot of assumptions made about it as well. Because some people are even like, oh, they could just HasLab it. They could just put out like a studio series Megatron as a HasLab, for example, and then it would be fine because it's specifically targeted to collectors.
There's still barriers that you have to pass there. Even though that technically with HasLab, it's age graded at 15 plus instead of 8 plus, which is the normal. So a little less stringent on the rules there. There are still like international toy law thing like that, like gun law that you have to adhere to. So it still becomes an issue.
Do you know, this, bear with me on this one, right, guys? But I'm currently looking.
Let's give you a curveball.
Yeah, here we go, curveball with some vibes. But so at the moment, I'm trying to find different versions of Megatron, e-hobby version, right? And
the black one.
And I'm looking around the world, and I'm like, oh, right, okay, there's one over there. And I'm like, wait, can that be put in the post? I tried to send a battery back to Amazon recently, and that was a nightmare.
You can import it to the UK. You should be okay.
But it gets to that point where I can understand from Hasbro's point of view, this just is not worth the hassle because it's like, it's just massive. And let's take our nostalgia glasses off as well and just go, okay, well, we have, as we say, we've had Megatron in all these different versions as well, and I am not wedded to him being a gun at all. You know, it's like, it's not my favorite version of a Megatron. I love the G1 version, don't get me wrong, with his janky legs. Sorry, Maz. But you know,
trigger
it's
pelvis. Yeah,
it's trigger pelvis. Exactly. There's a lot wrong with it when you start breaking it down. You go, this is just a bit weird as well. But it's also the fact that we've now kind of moved on, and dare I say we've progressed as well, that it's just like I don't buy toy guns from my son. He's not interested, I'm not interested, and it's not something. And he did get a Nerf gun once, and he shot me right between the eyes. It was a very good shot, and then it was put in a drawer, you know.
Yep.
And we talked recently about that Classics figure as well, and I actually didn't buy that because I was like, I don't really want another gun Megatron in my collection. Actually, I'm not that bothered anymore.
I feel bad now, Jason, because you came over to my house, and obviously I
shot me.
I shot you with
yeah, you see, and that's the reality.
Kit, but yeah,
that's the reality. I got
bringing
shot
out a
Brave.
Dagwan figure right there.
Yeah, I know. Just have it to hand. You know?
Oh, just right there. Yeah.
This is the things that happen when you go to Sixo's house. You can't be shot with any kind of regular cheap toy gun. It's got to be some Japanese vintage chrome thing.
He's got them all mounted on the wall with his pretender hats, you know, just like trophies.
I definitely do not.
Jason was very brave.
But you are right though, Jason. It's like, because as much as, you know, I do like a 1980s gun robo, you know, I'm a big fan of that, and I have a few, you know, along the way. I like that as a collection of my thing, but I don't get toy guns for my son either, just for that reason. It's a weird divide almost, and it's I think there is a kind of cut-off point for some of us in that regard, isn't there?
Yeah, I actually say that just now though, but my son currently is playing with like some little kind of G.I. Joe style figures and a big tank with a big massive gun on it and stuff like that. So
it's true.
And let's be honest, all the Transformers hold guns and all this kind of stuff.
They all have guns.
Well. So they're all part of it. But it's a very different vibe when your main bad guy transforms into a weapon, which doesn't sit with me as I'm not as comfortable with it as maybe I was never comfortable with it. It's not my thing.
I mean, we could make him an upside down submarine if that makes everybody.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, absolutely. There we go. That's an answer. Yeah,
Shockwave.
Spaceship.
Shockwave.
I'm sure you have thought about it every which way, but just in case, I'm going to put this out. Just 'cause I'm sure that either yourself or someone has thought this, but I did think this was a clever one. That if he is a tank, I presume obviously the robot mode would look kind of, you know, pretty cartoon accurate, you know, whatever. But
I would certainly hope so.
You would hope. Yeah. I'm kind of looking at your face like, but,
well, something that I will throw out there. So about when I first joined the brand for Transformers and Core Class was first starting, that Core Class Megatron that came out that was a tank, originally the hope was to actually make him a pistol.
Cool.
Oh, right.
And that was actually how design and development started. I worked with a Jima-san on that at first, and then we talked to our lawyers in QA, and they were like, "You have to be kidding!"
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it was like, "Well, wait, I thought because I was pushed." Well, I was it was tiny, but the request actually came from my management. It's like, yeah, and at this scale, we should finally be able to do it. So just kick it off and get it going.
Wow.
Then we did, and then when we actually talked to like our people, they were like, "Absolutely not." So that's when design changed to make him a tank.
That's interesting.
So even size and scale.
There's nothing that can be done there. Yeah,
but it's moving like that across the whole industry though, because I think it's like Warner Brothers. They have a ban on any of their toys coming with guns, so that's why now like, Batman figures and none of them, even the ones that like the Joker, don't come with guns anymore. It's just a flat ban on it. I just think it's just the way things are going.
Well, that's interesting because the suggestion was to at least have a potential Studio Series Megatron come with a little Walther of some sort. Do you know what I mean? Like the Browning that was snuck in with...
that would certainly be the easy thing to do. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Just throwing it out there, you know.
Yeah. There we go.
Go small or go home.
Little idea. Exactly. But who knows? Who knows? It's
who knows, indeed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Certainly not us.
Unless anyone that wants... The world's smallest Transformer Megatron. That's where you go get that one. You know,
yeah, it's pretty cute.
Did they actually do? I have a world's smallest Optimus. Did they do a Megatron?
They did.
Oh wow!
They did.
Okay,
it's actually very cool.
Fragile little thing, but it's cool.
It's good to put in Starscream's hand, masterpiece.
They revealed the Shield Megatron, wasn't it? It was a small Legends class pistol as well.
Yeah, I remember that one.
There was a Chrono Q one as well. little.
There was I think
my one of that
world's smallest
dissolved into a heap. It was
did
shattered. Shattered to pieces. It was gutted.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Dissolved?
It just shattered glass, Jason.
It just dissolved. It literally dissolved. I don't know why. Just like
I was going to say the world's smallest. I'm pretty sure there was a megaplex as well. A blue one
Oh wow.
with the
Really?
blue legs. Yeah, I think so.
He does this. He says these things, and then I
Wow.
spend like 2 hours after the pod trying to find them.
I know. I'm saying I think so when actually like I know so because I have it. But that's it is out there. So yeah, I think so. I think so.
Oh, brilliant! That
It
was
does
great.
exist. I'm pretty sure. And maybe I'm making it up now. I don't know.
Look, it's here as he lifts it up.
It's,
What is this
I
that I've
think I
just
did already.
stumbled upon?
But I'm having almost like a crisis of confidence now because now I'm like, have I made that up? And are people going to be like,
Does it exist?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like
I
I'm
know.
sure. I'm sure
Well,
I have it.
We'll put it out to the listeners, and they can let us know in the comments.
Yeah,
And on
exactly.
social.
Am
Exactly.
I just talking rubbish? So
Good stuff.
that's cool. But obviously, with studio series then and things like that. I mean, one other question I had was, we've obviously seen that there's been a bit of a shift. I don't know about like a shift away from Bayformers, but it's certainly been towards the G1, 86 line and things like that. Is that something that's going to continue? Do you think, or because there are obviously some Bayformers fans that are like, oh, we want more stuff as well, or do you think that might come back a little bit?
Oh yeah, they definitely deserve more stuff, and more stuff is definitely on the way. The 86 stuff does sell a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, like my management and marketing are like, maybe throw in another 86 character. And it's
Right.
like, okay. More than happy to. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm just going to throw it out here. In 2026, when it's the 40th anniversary of the movie, we will probably have blown through like all of the 86 characters.
Well,
by
I was
then.
going to say, because it's a finite cast at the end of the day. It's a large cast, but there are only ultimately so many names.
And I can
And
mine
what
deleted
happens-
scenes for only so long. So-
Right.
to get all those other unique death scenes and things like that I want.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, are we going to see like a dead wheeljack and things like that?
Don't tempt me. We'll see. I definitely say that's possible. And then a couple fans actually reached out. It's like, oh, will we ever get like death packs of like the Michael Bay stuff, like of like Ironhide and like Ratchet? And it's like, oh, that's possible too. I don't see why not.
Really?
So yeah, we could definitely look into that.
Wouldn't like a dead Ironhide from the movie just be like a small puddle of goo?
Well, we'll say like as he's turning into the cosmic rust, like
Yeah, exactly.
like yeah,
A little bag of rust. Yeah.
yeah, just a bag of sand.
Pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the masterpiece chest. Yeah,
Yeah,
You've been doing the video games in that line as well. Like, how cool has that been? Like bringing those back, because obviously they're not available currently, but they might be. But it's nice to see those designs because they seem to be forgotten for quite a while, and it's really fun seeing them again.
they're such iconic designs, and that I have so many good memories of sitting down and playing that game with like my brother and my friends. So yeah, that was really exciting to bring those back and work on that. So hopefully we'll get a few more of those out there as well, because there's quite a cast that we could go through.
Yeah.
Totally.
But with all the concept art stuff and things as well. I mean, like the Megatron and stuff like that must have been. I presume that was you. Yeah, and the Sunstreaker.
So I was going to say, when I was in the toy shop earlier, Evan, there was that concept Sunstreaker was on the shelf right there. I did put it back, I'll be honest, this time. Because
okay.
I got Swoop and Bumblebee Studio Series, but that was lovely. And I was actually going to ask you about that when you're working on like the concept. So this is obviously concept based. You've got access to CAD files for this, but do you have less info for this kind of to go off of on this characters?
Yes, and like for that Megatron, which is one that Sam worked on, we had everything. We had CAD, we had art, because that was a deleted scene that was removed at like the very last minute. But for the Sunstreaker, we only had like concept art.
Right, wow.
And to be honest, those Cybertronian mode, like TF7 figures did very well for us. So that was one of the reasons that there was a lot of enthusiasm about like, hey, can we get a few more of those out there? And it's like, yeah, we got a couple more that we can do. Sunstreaker was a bit of a challenge, but he was a lot of fun. I worked with Kunihiro-san on that, which Kunihiro is essentially TakaraTomy royalty. Like he worked on G1 Hot Rod and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and he's always brilliant. Like I'm always mind blown by like everything that he presents, and it's just like, what if we did this? And it's like, yes, let's do that.
Well, I was when I was looking at it, because I actually really love. I think you're getting rid of them, but I really love the open packaging. So there's no plastic tape in front of it or anything.
Yeah, and I believe we have announced that yes, we are going back to window.
Which kind of makes sense when I see the horror stuff online, where people have removed heads and stuff and swapped them over and all that kind of stuff. But these were all very nice in Scotland, and no one's swapping out any figures in the boxes. But
happy to hear that.
I picked up the Studio Series Bumblebee, and actually the Transformers 1 Bumblebee. Actually, there was a beautiful face sculpt on that, and then looking at around packs as well. But that Sunstreaker, it just seeing the molding and detailing in the face, this was like another level at that kind of scale as well. And is that something now that you're finding that you're able to bring in like way more detail? It seems to me that a lot of the toys now that in the last, say, 5 years, which is quite a long time, but you're getting just the ability the techniques are getting better, you're getting more detail because it's coming from CAD files and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and I definitely think that like it's more noticeable on like the Bay movie, live action movie figures, just because of how much like extra greeble and things like that has. But I think that this was probably really noticeable when like the War for Cybertron stuff started, right?
Yeah,
like they had so much extra detail on them. I just think we're just getting better, I guess.
Yeah.
And I hope we can continue to improve and get better.
What are the things, Evan, that you like as a designer? Obviously, there's a lot of things that you work on where, you know, you take inspiration from other designs, things like this, I'm sure. But what are the things that you are happy to say that's like an Evan Brooks signature? You know, that's something that you have brought to the kind of design of Transformers, if that makes sense.
Ooh.
Not to put you on the spot.
The only thing, I have to go back to this Optimus Prime, just because it, like, even initially from the kickoff and like from the design, like get go, I was just like, he has to have butterfly hinges in his arms. Yeah. Like that has to be there. We have to have this level of articulation. And that's always something that I will try to fight for. I don't know what my signature would be other than that.
That's a good one.
I don't know. I just hope that they're good toys and that people enjoy them. To be honest, I actually think I would be happier if someone would be like, oh, I didn't realize you did that because it was just a good toy and I just thought that was done by someone else. And I'm like, that's great.
I think it is getting harder to tell in a weird way. Do you know what I mean? Like, certainly toys from the past, particularly going back to G1, you know, when you hear, oh, someone worked on this toy and this toy, you go, oh, I can kind of see that. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I think nowadays, you know, maybe the lines are getting a little bit more blurred in a weird way. Like, and I don't know if that's the kind of cross-collaboration approach or whatever it might be. But
no, I definitely think you're right. Like, I think that because, like, we work as a team and we go back and forth and we try to, like, I guess, meet those standards. I think that's kind of where the figures are netting out, which I'm hoping everybody's happy with.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. So, I mean, Optimus is an interesting one as well, because when it comes to that kind of design, and, you know, you talked about like the CAD files and that with the more recent examples of characters, but with something like Optimus or the older ones, I know you use a lot of reference and you've got model sheets from different angles, that kind of stuff. But how do you decide like the actual proportions of what something like that is going to look like then?
I mean, that's a lot of give and take with just how the transformation ends up as well. Just because when you're designing and you're starting with the robot in the vehicle form and you're trying to make sure everything fits everywhere it's supposed to, sometimes proportions just end up the way that they are. And then you kind of have to be like, okay, if we actually give him like a fully animation accurate head, it will look very small. So what if we just like widen that just a little bit? There we go. Now it looks better.
Because I guess there must be a bit of a trade-off. We talked a little bit about this with some of the Masterpiece toys that got to the point of being very slavishly cartoon accurate, you know, almost to the point of like taking the image of what you saw on the screen and sort of, you know, rendering it in 3D, if you like. The one I was talking about is like the Bumblebee, you know, MP45.
Which
I have opinions on, but that's, you know, that's a whole thing. But that to me was really interesting because there must be a fine line somewhere between it looks really good in 3D form, but it's also cartoon accurate. And then there must be a line where actually you can go too far with the cartoon accuracy towards it not looking good in reality. Does that sort of make sense?
It does. And I think then you kind of have to think about who your audience is and what they expect. Because I think with Masterpiece, it's like, who is your audience? And I think it's the fans that want that slavishly G1 accurate design, right?
Yeah.
And then I say that like the Studio Series and the Generations is like they still want like simple transformation. Like it can look mostly accurate, but sometimes it's not going to fully match just due to the nature of like the compromises that had to be made. But it's also a little bit cheaper.
But there's a kind of mind's eye thing with some of it as well, isn't there? Where like the some of the characters look kind of how you imagine they look. Maybe if you were to hold it up against the screen, it's not going to be completely there, you know. But does that matter in a weird way, you know?
I think color, especially, just because that can be subjective to some people. Depending on your monitor as well, and like a bunch of other things where you're just trying to match as accurately as possible, and then it just, when you get your first sample in and you're looking at like, that's not what I wanted. Why did it end up like this? I don't know. It's always a lot of balance and a lot of back and forth, I guess.
I know you said about having to really work on like the color of like the retro hot rod, for example.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
You righted a 30-something year wrong.
Yeah.
Finally got the pink hot rod as he should have been. Pink at last.
Well, that color just, it seems to vary depending on what transfer of the movie you're watching.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And it was just like, because I have the 35th anniversary, I have video cassettes of that movie, and it's like, I would put them all on different monitors, and it's like, okay, is my TV color grading wrong? Like, because none of these colors are syncing up. Where's the middle ground? What do I do? Yeah, that was fun. For whatever reason, that color of magenta just, I don't know, it just hated being on screen.
Yeah, having been there and done cell painting for animation in the past.
My God.
Yeah, that's how old I am. I filmed on film.
Wow.
It is. If you're painting something like that, it's like if you're doing Gundams, for example, right? You're trying to put a yellow onto something. It's just such a transparent color. And magenta is one of those colors that you'll put it down and it'll look pinky. The next time you put it down slightly thicker, it'll look purpley. Yep. And you get everything in between.
It's like, what is horrible. Next to it? What is under it? Like, especially painting yellow on figures never looks as good as like the molded yellow.
Exactly.
It's the same with red, and it's like, okay, because it's being painted on a white part, so it got a little bit brighter, so it looks pink. Like, these are all these weird considerations that you always have to think about as well, which that just adds to the complexity of trying to get one of these figures out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
To me, though, I think you absolutely nailed it with that hot rod. I know I've said to you before, but it was just such a...
I'm happy that you are happy about that.
I'm so happy. Oh my God. I like how,
I have 3 of them.
Oh, I'm so happy.
The first few years of this podcast, it was marked by a minor campaign to constantly make pink hot rod. And then you did it. And then we were all like, what?
Are we influencers?
Happening? It was like a little mini episode, didn't you? You imagine it was like a victory lap, like, oh my God, now what do we do with our lives?
Never forget the day when I first saw pictures of it and it just dropped out of nowhere. It was like, oh, this is happening. And I was just stunned. We were all sharing pictures in our little group chat, just like, look at this thing. Do you know what I mean? Oh my God. It was just...
they did it.
I'm so happy
they've done
to hear
it.
that.
Oh my God, they've done it. It was just amazing, honestly.
Yeah.
I still can't believe it's real, actually. Like, I still look at it sometimes and I'm just like, oh my God, do you know what I mean?
There is a weird, I don't know, what's the word? It's almost like reverence to like touching those G1 molds, where I was very hesitant at first, where it was like, am I allowed to change these colors? Like, is that okay? And then it's like, who's going to stop me?
But you were signed up by Triple Takeover, you know, that was it.
It's seeing those molds though in new colors. It gives them such brand new life, and it's like, one of my favorite things with toys now is experiencing G1 molds I've never did. So like Star Saber is incredible. The fact that that's a thing, and it's finding those kind of things, and there's a joy to seeing toys you know so well. And they've got such a place in your heart, but seeing them new again. Yeah. And that's what it's like with these. I know like the cartoon colors and stuff, and it's like, whoa, I love this toy and I know it so well. And here it is again, but slightly different. And it's so nice to experience it again.
That was part of the thinking, where it was just like, okay, I want to make this seem like this is what they intended for the cartoon. Because there were so many that came out and it's like, well, that doesn't match what showed up on screen. And I used to get so angry about that as a kid.
I think what your changes have really shown me, actually, and it's funny because it's the little things that maybe you don't notice, as a fan or whatever. But like Hot Rod is a good example with the knees, where you've just changed the color placement or whatever to kind of make the thighs seem a little bit longer and to kind of have the boots come down lower. And it's funny because actually you suddenly go, oh my God, actually all the molding is in the original toy to match the animation model, but it was just colored in a weird way, almost to kind of not match it. And it's a little bit the same even on like Soundwave and stuff like that, where you look at the two little lines, to the side of his cassette door and things like that. That it's all there, but just not originally painted. It's really funny.
It's interesting because obviously they must have looked at like the Diaclone figures, the Microman figures, and they just sketched up the cartoon design, right? And then part of me wonders if back then, how spray mask works is it's like a copper mask, and then obviously they spray over it, right? So I wonder if like the technology back in the day wasn't just there to get a lot of those fine details, because you look back at a lot of like the mini bots like don't have a lot of like their eyes painted, because I wonder if that was just too small. Hubcap, like even the like Bumblebee and Cliffjumper, right? Like their full silver face, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So I wonder if just the technology wasn't there back then to kind of like hit and make them look as accurate as possible. But I don't know.
So you've mostly done them as cartoons, but would there ever be like the door open to doing, say, like the G1 toys in the other colors? You guys know where I'm going to go, because you've got to ask about Blue Streak. Like, it's like the holy grail of toys.
That's the grail,
the one from the vintage box.
We did say, Evan, that after we felt like this sort of victory of Pink Hot Rod, we were like, right,
the Jedi moment.
We're gonna change now. It's gonna be Blue Streak all the way until that thing gets made.
I have so many theories that I imagine that when they were naming them, like someone had a stack of papers and they just dropped them and then they got mixed up. Because it's like, to this day, it's like Skywarp and Thundercracker, like in my head, I always have to pause and be like,
Same.
Skywarp is purple.
Jason still can't get it right.
Yeah, because it's like you associate sky with like blue, and it's like thunder with like dark colors.
He gets it,
and it's just like,
and he works at Hasbro.
It's just like I always have to, and it's the same with like Blue Streak and Smokescreen, right? Because it's like one is smoky color and one actually has like blue on it.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the Silver Streak. Who's that guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear.
But I don't see why there's no issue that we couldn't make that happen in the future.
Well, I mean, you would make a lot of
the dream toy G1 blue.
I was going to say you would make a lot of people very happy. You would make 3 people very, very ecstatic. Maybe 4.
Maz would die. I think that's
Exactly.
Maz has an original. He doesn't need a reissue.
That's true.
So.
No, he's going to be sitting there going, "No, I really do."
I'm sure he would like a reissue as well. So. But there must be, Evan, like dream projects for you, or things that you would, are there toys that you would really love to see get made, or are they things that you've already made that were like a dream project at the time?
The Optimus Prime was a big one. Just because
the studio series,
the 86 one, like my father shared a birthday with Peter Cullen, and that was like, like that was like a weird connection with us. And so that was like. That was kind of the, like, I have an Optimus Prime shelf, so that was like I made it as a toy designer. I get to put the Optimus Prime I made on my Optimus Prime shelf.
And quite a legendary one as well, right? Like, I mean, I know it's new and all, and it's just coming out, but it stands to reason that it should be a fairly prominent addition in that lineup.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so, at least. Like, from what I've been seeing in like Japan and everybody, it seems like everybody's been enjoying it, which I know Jomo-san checks out. Yeah. And he put so much hard work into this. So same with the Ultra Magnus as well, because that was another one that was like, we need to do a good Ultra Magnus. But other dream projects, I don't know. I just would like to keep going, I guess. There's so many on the bucket list. Too many.
I guess it must be weird when you've got so much on the go as well, that it must be hard to kind of sit back and be like, oh, if I could just make anything, what would it be? Because I mean, how many figures at a time are you working on, realistically? How many designs?
That's a good question. Because it bounces between all the exclusives and the HasLab. I don't know numbers off the top of my head, to be honest.
So that many then is the
I mean, it's maybe 30 or 40, somewhere around there.
Wow,
it's a lot, isn't it?
I guess, yeah. depending on other people in like of the company in different departments, like they churn out other figures. Like in Marvel and Star Wars, like they churn out so many of those. So I don't know. I guess it does.
Yeah, you're doing 2 toys at once, though. You're doing an alt mode and a robot, so
I suppose so. Yes,
that's allowed. It's allowed to have a bit more time.
I was going to ask you about the HasLabs and stuff actually, because obviously that's something that I know you've worked on. Is that like a very different process to working on like the studio series and like mainline stuff and things like this, just because of the kind of additional budget? Or?
Yes, I definitely say it's a bit different. Just because one, it is a completely different team inside Hasbro. To the point where at one point in time, it was a completely different designer. And then they realized, we should probably have the actual Transformer designers work on this.
Right.
So then we were brought back on. And that's what happened in the middle of like Deathsaurus and things like that. But it is different. But at the same time, we're still working with like Yuki-san over at TakaraTomy, who's like, he's also Transformers royalty. So it's always a thrill to work with him. Process isn't too different. They're just more complex, I guess. And they have a little bit more freedom just because of the price points and the budget. But they're hefty projects. I think about the hours.
Yeah, I was going to say, it always strikes me as like you guys take them quite seriously. I know even just like chatting with BMAC as well, there's this sort of air around a HasLab of like, we've kind of got to get this right. Is that fair to say?
I mean, yeah, they're one a year, right?
Yeah.
And usually the stuff that we're putting out there is stuff that hasn't had a figure in a very long time, and we want to make sure that it's as good as possible, which I'd say that about everything that we try to put out. But HasLabs in particular, yes, they usually run through several more checks and bounds. You have to double check.
Yeah.
What is that moment like, just before you announce it when nobody knows what it's like? Is there like this like absolute like moment of terror, like, oh my god, what if it goes all wrong? When you go back, no, everyone's gonna love it. You have that point where you back and forth, butterflies, all that. Like the worry of like, is this actually gonna fund? I've never been too worried about that, I'll be honest. Because it's like, I know everything that we put out has been stuff that people have been asking for, and that is our plan continuing forward. I guess look out for next January / early February for our next announcement, which is going to be essentially the Transformer timeframe going forward, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Instead of October going into the holidays.
Yeah. That's probably easier. Yeah, I think a few people with Deathsaurus were like, it's I need to pay when?
Yeah, we definitely heard that, and we're like, okay, we need to move this out a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool. And obviously with something like, I was going to call him Fire Convoy then, but RID Optimus
You absolutely
Prime.
Can. I know what you mean.
Cool, yeah. I mean, in my head, it always is Fire Convoy, I guess, just because that's just what I think of it as. I don't know. But
that's his name.
Yeah, that's his name.
It's his name.
That must have been interesting because I know just before we hit record tonight, we were talking about like the RID Sideburn as well, the legacy figure there. That's a really interesting area for me because, of course, that toy is very cartoon accurate, the HasLab, but actually the animation was very accurate to the original toy as well.
Yeah.
So is there like a sort of additional consideration there where it's like we want to make it a little bit different to the original but not too much? Or
I would say with the details we definitely did go a little bit different. So the detail drawing for Fire Convoy / RID Optimus Prime, it was actually handled by Taiga-san, who was the original character designer for the animation back in the day. So he did a lot of updated details. And actually, so I speak to this about, I filmed the EP1 video, and that should be going live at some point. It's with the Pulse team right now, so hopefully they'll be putting it out very soon, where I go through our first sample of the toy and kind of show you how it transforms and things like that. But consideration-wise, I definitely think that that Sideburn, I think as we kind of talked about, that was originally like a Shadow Striker, right?
Yeah.
Its intent was to be a Shadow Striker first. Its design probably would have been different if it was a Sideburn first, and probably would have lent itself more to being animation accurate, as opposed to obviously our Fire Convoy RID Optimus Prime, which is just like, it has to look like the original toy.
Totally. Yeah.
Also because Yuki-san was the original designer of the toy back in the day, so he's coming back again to play his greatest hits. And it's like,
it must be quite nerve-wracking with Fire Convoy, because Fire Convoy is one of the greatest toys ever made, and it's like,
I completely agree with you. Yeah,
you've got to like take that and do something new with it, whilst at the same time retaining everything that made the original so special. And it looks, so far we've all backed it, and it just looks incredible. It's like it must be a thrill for you to be able to add to something like that kind of legacy to one of the greatest toys ever made.
It is nice when things are in sync, and I always have hesitation when I like when I send a deco spec over to TakaraTomy or something like that, and they're like, I'm always like, oh, are they going to hate this? And then they write back, it's like, it looks perfect, good to proceed forward, and it's just like, I'm worthy. I'm
signed off.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feels like it's great. But yes, it is also still weird, and I think it will always be weird to be a part of this.
That's because you care, though, isn't it? I think that's what it is.
Sometimes I hate myself for caring so much, because it's like you put in the long hours at night, things like that. And it's just like, if I cared just a little bit less, I could go to bed right now.
That's being creative, though, as well. You know, where you just like...
Yes, it is. When the juices start flowing, like 10 minutes before you fall asleep, and you're like, oh, crap, totally. I gotta get up and do this.
That's that classic, totally.
I think we can all identify with that feeling as well. So,
do you know, just talking about that figure, though, I've realized that with my house move coming up, I'm going to have to update my pulse details so that it goes to the right address. Otherwise, that could be a disaster.
Get on it, Jason.
Definitely. You've got some time. You've got a bit of time, because I don't think that ships until next year. But you've got time.
Okay, right, fine. They email you as well. They email you.
They do.
It's
always that thing.
You don't know how long he's been moving house as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Who
knows?
Saga.
I know.
Yeah, but they do double check the address with you. They get in touch before it ships and say, "Are you sure this is where you still live?" Which is
I'll
good.
be like, "Oh no,"
because I moved when after Deathsaurus had funded. I moved after that. So
and it arrived at. Oh yeah, it did arrive,
and it made it to the correct address. Yeah. So which is all good.
Okay. Phew, good.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
Excellent.
You'll be right. They'll look after you.
Fine.
They'll look after you. But no, I did think it was just interesting with that and Sideburn kind of dropping, not at the same time, but kind of all being worked on, and the sort of two different sensibilities around how those characters were handled.
Two different executions. Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know it's not your toy. I know it's a Mark thing, but the Sideburn actually is a really interesting one for me, because to me, it's kind of like more like a sort of old school Generations toy in a way, like in the era, like think back to, you were saying earlier about like classics and things like that. But like, I was thinking of like the Inferno mold, because it looks nothing like the original Inferno toy or cartoon character, but it
the one that was an
Inferno.
Updated fire truck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just as one example,
in spirit, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels like an Inferno, and it looks like Inferno, but it also looks nothing really like if you stand it next to the original. Because it's not the same.
Well, because we didn't have Japanese fire trucks from the 80s.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. I completely understand. It's an interesting point to make. Interesting.
I don't know. It just really struck me. I was messing with it the other day, and I was like, I think maybe because I have the original Sideburn as well and love it.
I do as well. Mine is too loved, actually.
Right.
So we're all
feeling the wear, is it?
Same with all the Carr brothers, because I played with them too much as a kid.
Yeah. Even mine, I think some of mine are yellowed badly. Again, like you were saying earlier, no reason why. They've been in the dark for most of their lives, but I think
it just happens.
Yeah. And it's definitely not hot up here, so it's not a problem.
Evan, one sort of final thing then, just to kind of bring us to a close. And I know there's been a little bit of speculation about this online and whatever else, but obviously there's some changes happening. Another shift, if you like, Hasbro coming up on the horizon. And John Warden, who you mentioned earlier, that you've worked with previously, is actually coming back onto the design team for Transformers, and that's coming up fairly soon now, I think, isn't it? That we'll start to hear a bit more about that. I know that it kind of works quite a far in advance, but what's the deal there in terms of sort of his influence and how it all works?
Well, he's essentially our director now, so Mark and I report to him.
Yeah.
So he's coming back as I guess technically our manager. Like, we are still the design leads on our individual segments, but essentially everything for Fan will be funneled through him to get his final approval.
Right.
So I've worked with John in the past for many years over Zoids and Beyblade and things like that. I think we get along quite well, so should be great.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's just funny, isn't it? Because I think people got wind of this, and then there was a little bit of worry because I think people, I guess now in the sort of modern era, people have become so accustomed to you guys through the streams and things like this. And I think now more than ever before, there's this sort of transparency with Hasbro.
Connection as well, isn't there?
Exactly.
People.
And I think people have really taken ownership of that. So there was almost a kind of like, the team is changing. What's happening? Do you know what I mean? And it sort of caused a little bit of a little flutter of worry almost. But from your perspective, it seems like it's very much business as usual, right?
I don't think anything will change too much. I mean, Mark and I will still be in the front. Like, we'll still be talking to all of you and things of that nature. No, if anything, this was essentially done so that the entirety of the Transformers and even like the Takara business is a lot to handle. And it was funneling through Michelino, who was just kind of the director over all of it. But he leaned more towards like the kids stuff. And that was the stuff that he really wanted to be over. So they kind of realized it's like, well, okay, let's kind of split duties. So someone handles fan and someone handles like the kid side of things. So that's sort
interesting.
That's sort of why this happened. And it's to better help with communication and make sure like everybody's kind of informed about what's going on, things of that nature. So it was just to kind of more help out the brand than anything.
So the split is with stuff like Earthspark or whatever kind of comes after Earthspark, for example, would go into the kids section, I guess.
Yep, yeah? Things like that. Yeah, and then John is still over G.I. Joe and other things like that as well. So
okay, interesting. And what's next for you then in terms of things coming up? Are there any kind of subtle hints or teases that you can kind of
juicy details?
Yeah, exactly.
So we have PulseCon coming up September 13th. So it happens
very soon.
Yeah, the week before, which actually I don't know when this airs, so maybe this will air after that.
This is always confusing for us as well. We always have this thing of like trying to work out actually when it does air. I can tell you when this is out.
It's going to be, what day? It's going to be a week. Is it a week tomorrow?
It's a week. Actually, it's a week yesterday. Because we're doing this. We're doing this one before. Yeah. Well, it's on our Patreon a week yesterday. So we're doing this one a lot closer to release than normal. So actually it'll be out 2 weeks yesterday, if that makes sense.
To everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. But obviously we have that coming. We have TF1 coming September 20th everywhere. That's going to be huge.
Except here.
Except
October
here.
Oh, except there?
October.
Oh, then I lied. I'm so sorry.
Everywhere else.
Oh, no.
Everywhere else. And just the UK.
We're back in the 80s again.
We get it in October.
No, exactly. They're literally putting us through it. Like, you're an island. And
oh, no, you're going to get
an island.
You're going to get bright recolor of the movie, and it's going to be neon green.
Yeah, exactly.
Pink Optimus. I'm excited for that.
It's so true.
The one thing I do want to state is I know at Comic-Con we said that we were going to reveal Devastator at PulseCon. It was decided, actually, to move that out a month. I really wish that decision would have come before we announced at Comic-Con that we were going to reveal it at PulseCon, but here we are. So please wait until October for the reveal of Studio Series 86 Devastator.
Yeah, cool.
But then I have MCM London, I believe.
All right,
so
cool. We're going to see you
24th. There. Yeah, apparently you will. It's a big push internally to send all the designers this year, so I'm going to be there with like a bunch of the other designers from inside Hasbro. And I think that's it for the year. So, but yeah, that's kind of the stuff that's coming down the pipeline.
That'll be good. We'll look after you. By the way, we had great fun last year.
I appreciate that
with BMAC. We took him out for noodles and sake. So I don't know. We have said this. Yeah, it was a really good evening. We have said this year we need to be a little bit more organized because I think we made BMAC walk for a good few miles around central London in the pouring rain. So I don't think he was quite prepared for that.
That sounded great until the pouring rain.
Yeah, exactly.
But basically, you're just telling me to bring an umbrella. So
yeah,
I will.
Bring an umbrella.
A windproof one.
It was very wet last year. It was very wet. So
isn't it wet every year?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, pretty much.
It was raining here today. There you go. But, okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Evan. And listen, we really appreciate your time. I think if you're okay to stick around just for a second, we do have, I think, a question from one of our patrons that actually might be of interest to you as well. So we'll come to that. But we do have a patron, don't we, Jason?
We do, yeah. Would you like to give a rundown of the patron
I can certainly do that. Very quickly. Yeah, absolutely. If you enjoy what you're hearing here and you want to get a little bit more, you should get on our Patreon. It's
popping.
It's absolutely
popping. Yeah, popping.
You can check it out at www.patreon.com/Triple Takeover. And there's lots of good stuff on there, actually. There's 5 glorious tiers of stuff. You've got just the entry level where you can support us and get an ad-free feed as well. So that's pretty exciting. Or you can get in a Man in Pig and get access to episodes such as this up to and including a week early. So that's pretty good. Could be listening to people like Evan a whole week early. It's very exciting. Or you can get on Inner Beast and get to our Discord as well. And that really is popping, Liam, isn't it?
That's the most poppinest place of.
I know that's what you often say. That it is popping.
Do you know, it's worth mentioning that we have a Beasts channel, which is all of our pets, which is really lovely.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
we do.
It's really lovely. I'm enjoying that very much, that channel. That's great.
Evan, you would enjoy it. It's lots of pictures of cats.
So many nice cats.
That sounds lovely.
It's great.
And a turtle, actually. There was a turtle, wasn't there?
Whoa. There was, approaching a cat.
Yeah.
Very slowly. Yeah.
Was it Raphael? Because we all know he was the best turtle.
Hey!
There was no debate on
There
this.
we go.
Or Snapper if it was a Beast War.
Yeah, exactly.
Where are you on the Ninja Turtles? Which one's your favorite?
I was a Raph kid.
Yes. See?
I'm Mikey.
That's me,
I'm Mikey all the
James,
way.
James Roberts, and Nick Raphael.
We can all agree Jason is wrong, at least. That's something that,
Is that even a...
Michelangelo's amazing. Come on.
That was my brother's favorite, so I understand.
Yeah, there you go.
Michelangelo was like the one that they wanted you to like, though. That was, you know...
Story of my life.
There you go.
Is it?
Anyway.
No.
Anyway, you can also get on as a Sixo's butler and get access to fortnightly minisodes where we talk about all kinds of different topics. Or you can get access to our top tier, which is Goldbox Classics, and you get fortnightly mini-series as well. And then we talk about a range of ongoing topics, everything from IDW's More Than Meets the Eye to Jason's focus on Titan's Return. We've actually got Maz coming back for some bits as well, so that's pretty exciting. So we're very much looking forward to that. And we've got Raz coming on to talk prototypes pretty soon as well, so can't wait for that. We're talking Skybound, Razmataz. We made that joke last time. Yeah,
Razmataz.
It's always funny.
Yeah, we did do that one. And of course, we've got Liam's infamous and famous Tatman.
Tatman, indeed. Got a new one of those coming up. What was the last one? Marvel vs. Capcom, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
That feels like a long time ago. Yeah.
Which is a vintage toy line that most people don't remember. But yeah, I've got some more good stuff coming up for that.
Great.
I remember you talking about wanting the War Machine for that.
Yes, and some Falcon Dave. Did I talk about this on the TFA?
I think you did, but it's like I very much have an attachment to that set because it came with the Mega Man as well, and it was like
yes, with the Mega Man with his little,
a friend got
pieces.
me that for like a birthday a long time ago, and it was like, I finally have it.
So you actually had them. See, this is amazing because
I have them somewhere. Yeah.
Man, see, I saw the X-Men versus Street Fighter ones, and that was about it. And I never saw the Marvel vs. Capcom ones separately. So getting those, the War Machine, is fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
Evan, if ever you want to come on again and talk other toy lines apart from Transformers, or just some real Tat or Kenner or whatever, you know, you're always welcome, man, honestly. Yeah. Come on the Tat, man.
So true.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
You know, come behind the curtain and talk other toy lines, as it were. So, but yeah, you for everyone else, you can get all of this and more at patreon.com/Triple Takeover. And another perk is that if you sign up, Jason will attempt to pronounce your name.
Yes, I will. And this week, everybody, I was having to work out, is it a week?
Wow.
Yeah, this week, we've got 1, 2, 3, 6 new sign-ups. I'm going to go from top to bottom. No, wait, bottom to top. That's what I'm going to do. So we're going to start out with apology.
I don't think it matters.
Well, it's the anticipation because those Gold Box Classics, they're waiting.
The Go Box Classics, Jason.
The Go Box Classics.
Wow.
The Go Box Classics, yeah. So we've got an apologetic ramp, which is Sean McCarthy. Welcome, Sean. Thank you very much for signing up. And Man in Pig, Isomorphic Prime. That's an excellent username. Welcome, Isomorphic. And then for Sixo's Butlers, we have Turbine 027, which is Bobby Allen. We have TF Granddaddy as well, that's coming. And Dermal Denticles. Oh, excellent name. And at Gold Box Classics, we have Dad Bod Warrior, which I feel like we would get on quite well, Dad Bod. So Welcome
Are you
to
not
one and
TF
all.
Granddaddy as well, though?
Pretty much. That's a good point, actually. I should be, shouldn't I? That's very true. And we also, as well, gents, we have a question. And this is from one of our very engaged, very lovely, was even decked out in a T-shirt with his branding at TFN. It is Steve from Stevenage.
From Stevenage, yes.
Who sent us this.
Good God.
And Evan, this definitely comes to you as well. So I'll call out your names for an answer on each of these. I'll give you a bit of thinking time. So this is from Steve from Stevenage. Gents, a question for the pod. If you could introduce any gimmick you wanted to... How's he written? No, sorry, I'll start that again if you don't mind. Introduce any gimmick you want to... There's a missing 4 there, so let's try this. If you could introduce any gimmick you wanted to for the next Transformers toy line, what would it be, and why would it be glow-in-the-dark spy changers? So yeah, looking for a gimmick for the next toy line. Okay, I'm gonna give Evan a bit extra time because he's not heard this yet. So I'll come to Sixo. What do you reckon? Gimmick.
You bugger! It's normally Liam that goes first.
I know. I thought I'd mix it up a wee bit. I do actually have mine. If you just want mine,
go on. You do yours. Yeah. Go on.
So I've got mine too. So
I just want. I want that heat. I want that heat paint. You know, the where you grab it and it changes color. That kind of stuff. So you could just put your handprint on a
thermochromatic paint or something like that. I think is what.
What's it called?
Thermochromatic paint, I believe, is the technical term.
That's the name of a Transformer as well.
Of Benetton editions.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's a pretty cool one.
So Sixo, what about you?
Oh, back to me then. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry.
I'm still stuck on bloody pink light piping. Honestly, like I know that it's such an obvious one, but we talked about those Turbo Masters before. But like, as a gimmick goes, I know it's not like the most. I don't know, not the most unusual gimmick, but I absolutely love it. And I think a whole range with just like pink light piping, bring that back, proper 90s style Turbo Master stuff. You could do it with a little. I guess you can't really do the missiles in the same way these days anymore because they were choking hazard even back in the day. But
it's all for the game. Still, some child loses an eye. That's
exactly. I had to laugh because I bought my boy that Transformers Prime Predaking. Literally one of the first things he did was look at the missile and shoot himself right in the face.
They are hardcore ones as well. They are.
I know we always joke about it, but it got him right in the eye as well.
It's not a hair trigger.
Yeah.
I know they are very sensitive triggers. Those things.
He was literally looking at it like as he pulled it, and I was like, you kind of think, what were you hoping for here? Yeah. But I would probably say I'd just go pink light piping. So why not?
So do you know the Legacy Scourge that came out? Was it last year? That has stunning light piping, even in his shoulder pads going on as well. There's stuff going on.
Yeah, very nice.
Really nice. So that's a goodie. Liam, what about you?
Mine was similar to yours, Jason. Instead of the heat sort of colour changing thing, I was thinking of remember the water
one,
Hot Wheels. But was it the Stormtroopers, the G1 Stormtroopers?
The Stormtroopers did it, and the Aqua Speeders.
I was going to say Aqua Speeders, but
they were just called colour changes in the US.
I remember it from like Micro Machines and Hot Wheels and stuff like that as well. That did it. You pour them in water and they just change colour.
Yeah, totally.
Bring that thing back.
There's full size cars that have that paint on them now as well. What
happens when it rains? That must look.
Yeah, so it looks ridiculous. It kind of looks ridiculous.
Is probably the right word.
But if it gets like it's a proper monsoon, it's quite amazing because it then just gets all this looks like paint spatter all over it, and then goes the other color, and then dries out. It's kind of cool. But in Scotland, it's just always one color.
That sounds about right.
Evan, what about you for your gimmick?
I have 2, I suppose.
Nice. Yes.
Mutant masks were something, or the mutant heads was something that I was always like, I loved as a kid.
That's
just
cool.
The fact that, like you had your tarantulas and then you could like flip the head up and it had a different head and then put it down and it had the mutant face. That was a lot of fun. And I guess the other thing would just be like, I loved Titanium series, but I feel like it just needed to be toned down a little bit. And those could have been fantastic figures. So I feel like die-cast in like legs and feet and things like that, it adds like a hefty weight, a premium feel to figures. I feel like that's something fun that could come back.
That would be interesting.
That would be interesting, actually, yeah. Because I do like the titanium figures that I have, but they do slowly just kind of shrink into themselves.
Oh, yeah, because it's like only their knees and only their elbows were like plastic, and it's just like, oh God, I can't take it anymore.
It's an age thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I'm going to build on your idea then. I'm going to come back with just one more. I'm going to say, thinking of the diecast thing. I know, right? Why not?
Just one more thing.
Yeah, exactly. My blooming podcast. I can say whatever I want.
Your podcast.
There we go. Our podcast.
Too late, so it's recording.
We had to do this at TFN every time we kept referring to it as his podcast. Or someone said to me, "You mean us?" The conversation we had.
Say that. No. You know, it's Sixo and the Sixettes. That's it, isn't it? So, I'm joking. No, but I would love to see a return of Vinyl Tech or alternators or whatever you want. But like, obviously, Vinyl Tech was always my thing just because of the diecast and what have you. So that I think would be a lot of fun to see make a resurgence. You know, that 1/24 scale, real car modes and things like that. I think that would be awesome. And I don't know. I think about it a lot actually, and I'm always sort of 3 steps away from talking about Vinyl Tech, no matter what situation I'm in, which drives my wife a bit crazy. But
it's because you bought one of the actual cars, so you're always driving about in a Subaru Impreza.
That's true. That is true.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, my son loves it. I dropped him off. We went and picked up his last little bits of school uniform and stuff today, just before he goes back to it tomorrow. And he was having a great time. He was like, "Can we take the Subaru?" I was like, "Yeah, sure."
That's awesome.
Anyway, but no, I just think it would be great to have it come back and do some modern cars now as well, because it was a really different thing at the time in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, because it was all those like the Impreza and you know, Dodge
Jeep.
Viper and things like that were current at the time, that felt very different for Transformers in that regard. So it'd be fascinating to bring it back now and do some 2020 cars as well, I think.
Oh yeah. And I definitely think like the Knight Rider collab, the kit that has sort of been announced, like that's almost like a new one. And I know like Michelino, my director, like he is a huge car guy, and he as well, like he always talks about wanting to bring back that stuff. So I'm hoping that at some point, we can get onto it.
Oh, well, if he ever wants anyone to bounce any ideas off, I'm here. Do you know what I mean? I'll happily.
I'll give him your chat info.
Please do. I would love to see that. That would be, I think, out of everything that could happen now that we've got stuff like retro reissues and Missing Link, and do you know what I mean? A lot of that stuff. Other than like a reissue of the original prototype Unicron, I think Vinyl Tech Resurgence would be up there for me as like the big thing to happen now. That would be. I would die happy at that point.
We actually found a couple more of those prototypes about a year ago. So I was able to. We found like 5 broken ones, and I was able to cobble together 2 of them out of the spare parts.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like, so we have them in the office now, which is nice.
Of a Unicron?
Yeah, of a Unicron. So one in robot mode and then one in planet mode, where he's kind of like looking up. But yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
That's so cool.
What kind of size is it then?
He's pretty beefy.
Is he? All right.
He's nowhere near the size of the HasLab Unicron, but he's, if I were to modern scale, he's probably a little bit shorter than the Commander Jetfire.
Okay. Yeah.
So if that helps put things into perspective, because he had like a massive battery box and a speaker and things like that.
Oh, I did. All right. Wow.
I was gonna. Okay, if you don't mind me asking, because we actually know someone that owns the only one that's in private hands, which is Raz, who we've had on the pod before. He's a mate of ours, and he owns a prototype of it. But I think it's the only one that is owned outside of Hasbro. And
probably, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the wonder I always had about it was if the voice chip works on any of the ones that you've got, because apparently it's got a recording of Orson Welles on there. But
I'll be honest, I didn't check. Like that was so corroded.
Probably not.
By the time I found it, then no, probably not.
You can fix it with white vinegar. We've been told by,
Oh,
yeah?
Rock Lords.
It's true.
Yeah, bit of white vinegar in there. That'll get rid of all that rust.
Sarah repaired a game.
That's tomorrow's task.
Heals all wounds. And,
Yeah, exactly. Does it? Or
who
just
knows?
makes it more painful.
Yeah.
They'll come in the office tomorrow and they'll just find Evan soaking the Unicron in white vinegar. And they'll be like,
Yeah.
What are you
"Jason told
doing?
me,"
If anything goes wrong, don't blame me, right? So you melt the figure.
No, it's just curious because I think anyway, it would probably be one of the final things that Orson Welles ever recorded. If
Probably.
indeed he's on that voice chip, so it's just
We definitely have to see. I'll have to ask my electrical engineer friends. So
there you go.
see if they can salvage it.
Yeah.
it'd be
amazing.
interesting. It'd be a real little Transformers mystery.
Yeah.
It'd be great fun. So
Brilliant.
great stuff. Okay, well, guys, I think big thank you again to Evan for
Absolutely.
coming on.
Wait.
Oh, wait, he's got
Wait.
one. He's
We
got one.
also have a red bubble, and we did get a question, but it wasn't for us. It was for Evan.
Oh, right.
Is this you?
No, it was about t-shirts. It was about stuff like that. So it's
Mhm.
absolutely not Liam from Nottingham this time. This is Hugh from Houston.
Is it?
He-
Oh,
he
Houston,
emailed-
Houston, Texas.
Texas, yeah.
I thought you meant like Houston, like next to King's Cross for a minute.
Hugh from Houston.
Okay.
But he wrote, he just wanted to ask, Evan, on the live streams, you sometimes have this t-shirt of an Optimus Prime holding a cat with a bandana.
Yeah.
What is that?
So
where does one acquire one?
that's from our friends over at Symbiote Studios. So they make like official Transformers merch for us. So they have a bunch of unique t-shirt designs. I believe the one that they had this year for San Diego Comic-Con was Starscream with that cat as their mascot.
Really?
So like a little Ninja Turtles bandana and all that.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
"Ooh." I keep seeing you wear it. I was like, that's cool.
They're great people, and I love talking to them. But yeah, I guess check out Symbiote Studios for like any of their merch. I believe they may still have some of those. I don't know. That shirt was from a year or two ago, so they may be out of that one. But hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
She'll certainly check it out.
Yeah.
Was that your promotion of our Redbubble store, was it, Liam?
Oh yeah, rebel.com /.
Yeah, cool.
All that. Go buy t-shirts.
Really
Go buy
good.
t-shirts. Hugh.
Yeah.
Flawless.
Yeah.
Marketing in action.
Look, it's worth mentioning we have a new t-shirt and we have a new from Mr. Nick Roach up there
Oh,
now.
yeah.
We do,
well.
yeah. Nick
So
did
that's
a
worth checking out.
wheelie
you
design
know.
for us,
Amazing.
Scary wheelie.
t-shirt.
Scary
Yeah.
wheelie, flayed wheelie. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that episode. Was that a lot? What was that?
There was Minibots.
Oh, it was the Minibot
Yeah,
episode.
the Minibots.
Let's not
episode.
spoil it for Evan, but let's give him access to that episode as well because
That's a comic
that is-
episode.
that's-
Yeah.
that is peak Triple Takeover. That isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Is that based off of like the comic art wheelie, where he's like a savage wild boy? Or like,
No, it was Jason's description of Wheelie, the Wheelie toy, the original, looking like he's got a flayed human face.
So it's like
Oh.
someone's flayed his face and cut it off and stuck it on the
Oh
chassis
my
of the
god!
car.
Yeah, I completely
You
get
see?
it. Okay, yeah, I get
Yeah.
it.
And Nick did a wonderful lunchtime doodle of that, which then he agreed with us that we should slap on a t-shirt, and so you can get
We
that
have
now.
done. You can get that now.
It's
Yeah.
horrifying.
But the episode is got a lot of unique turns and traumas.
So to say.
We'll share. Don't worry. Yeah.
Okay, I look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, Evan,
Good stuff.
listen, thank you
Thank
so
you, Evan.
much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for
I know
having
you're
me.
Busy
Yeah,
man.
it's
Well, you're
super.
always welcome back as well, it's fair to say. So I said the same to BMAC as well and Mark, that, if ever you want to come on again, we'd love to do that and come on, talk some tat with Liam or whatever it might be. It'd be our pleasure. So,
Yeah.
but otherwise, thank you very much to everyone else for listening and catch us for the next episode.
Oh god, I can't take it anymore.